Hello, if anyone in the room could hear, could you unmute the chamber room, please?
Is going to be.
Sorry, we were muted.
I was muted.
Yeah.
I give a great speech for everyone online.
Oh, no.
Just let me know when we're good to go.
Can you come home?
No worries. Do you need my help?
There we go.
Okay. Should I start again?
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for seeing the test run.
Thank you very much.
As I was saying, for the people online, please mute yourself, turn off your camera, and switch your view to active camera only. That makes the best presentation. We're working on the kinks, but it's great being able to connect with you guys virtually, even in the time of COVID and having the restrictions. So thank you all for participating and keeping us all safe as a community. Today's discussion is the Tiger Grant, a case study on how our growth is managed. It's no secret that Big Sky is growing. And while we won't be talking about that all today, what we have done is invite our speakers here to illuminate how certain industries are dealing with this and how that ties into our public and private developments. As we hear time and time again, infrastructure is roads and bridges, but it's also so much more. It's the basic, the basic structures and facilities needed to run a society. And infrastructure investment is so crucial. What we're doing today is inviting our speakers to talk about these issues and how they are addressed and identified and why it's so important. That short-term pain for that long-term gain. One of the ways that the Chamber operates as a nonprofit membership organization is through the generosity of our sponsors. Thanks to their support, we are able to bring you this programming and many other valuable programs to you, our members, complimentary. So I want to thank Big Sky Quarry and Low Mountain Lane Company today with additional support from Sanderson Stewart. I would also like to thank our Double Black Diamond and Black Diamond members for helping to support and invest our programming and helping us to elevate Big Sky. Speaking of elevating Big Sky, let's look at a quick rundown of today's programming. We're going to start off with David Catt from the Western Transportation Institute, talk about the Tiger Grant, how we got here and what a Tiger Grant even is. Then we're going to turn to Daniel Scharf from Sanderson Stewart to give us updates on where we are and what we can expect with the Tiger Grant. We'll do a quick Q&A with the two of them focusing on the Tiger Grant, so please have your questions ready and submit to us. More on how to do that in a second. Then we'll kind of take a turn to some other infrastructure. We'll look at affordable housing infrastructure with Laura Seafang of the Big Sky Community Housing Trust. Then go back to David Catt to talk about an important vote happening for the Big Sky Transportation District right now. We'll do a Q&A with Laura and David, take a quick break, and then stay right here on the same video link to do the Gallatin Madison Joint County Commission meeting with the Resort Tax Board. Okay, like I said, we want your questions. This is a great piece of community infrastructure investment and a great way for you to engage in our community. So over the course of the program, at any time you want, please feel free to email info@bigskychamber.com, submit a question in the chat in the chat feature to the username submit questions here, or react in the Facebook Live. Okay, with that, I turn to David.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So I wear a lot of different hats, and primarily the one I'm wearing this morning is as the executive director of the Western Transportation Institute. We're part of Montana State University in Bozeman. And as Caitlin was talking about infrastructure here, One of the things we all know, of course, is Big Sky is unincorporated, which means depending on which part of the community you're in, you're either in Gallatin County or Madison County. However, we know Montana 64 here is a state highway. So NBT comes into the mix. And certainly, as an unincorporated area, the Chamber of Commerce has had a big role in convening the community about a lot of the different issues, including infrastructure. And it was actually about 5 years ago now that the Chamber came to the Western Transportation Institute and said that they wanted to have a conversation about transportation issues in Big Sky. And so at that time, Kitty Clemens was the executive director of the Chamber and approached us about having some listening sessions in the community and really hearing what people were concerned about, what the issues they saw related to transportation in the area. So we held 3 listening sessions in the community to get people's input. We brought big maps. We said, you know, draw on the maps. Is it turning movements? Is it people aren't stopping? Is it speed? What are the issues? And so while the focus was on Lone Mountain Trail, Montana 64, we certainly heard concerns of people who are commuting on US 191 as well. So we wrote up this report at the end of March in 2016. We had some good general information. There's some Montana Department of Transportation has some traffic counters in the Big Sky area, one just north on US 191 and just one down here before you get to Hoosier Falls Road. So we had some basic traffic counts, but we didn't do turning movements or those kinds of things. So we had some good general information to say, what are the issues?
And I recognize his voice. He did.
What was we had a changeover in the executive leadership at the Chamber of Commerce. But what our study generated was the need for more detailed information. And so with some funding from Resort Tax Board in Gallatin and Madison counties, the Chamber hired Sanderson Stewart to say, let's really delve into the data. Let's really look at what these issues are. So in August of 2017, Sanderson Stewart put out this report that really dove into the numbers. Said, let's look at the turning movements. What's going on at the different intersections? And what do we see? And so one of the things they saw was that the amount of traffic's really going to continue to take off. And so, you know, we see what was recorded at the time through 2016 and what the projections were. And when you're dealing with what are primarily 2-lane roads, you look at some of these numbers and say, holy smokes, that's a significant increase in traffic. And with that, what also do we see? And so again, they looked at a lot of the turning movements. What intersections do we see these issues? And you don't have to spend much time in Big Sky to understand what those are. So, you know, if you're heading east down Montana 64 here and trying to make a left turn into Ace, you know, you get a little worried that someone's going to run into the back of you going 45 or 50 miles an hour. You see skid marks on the roads at these places because, you know, someone wasn't paying attention and all of a sudden saw someone stop in front of them and hit the brakes pretty hard. So what Sanderson Stewart did was really provide this detailed information to say, let's really look at where some issues are. And they came up with then a set of recommendations. What should be done? One of the important things in this diagram is they show needing 3 more traffic signals on Montana 64 to say there's so many turn movements at some of these intersections that we really need to have signals here. And we know what a big deal it was for the community when we got the first signal in Big Sky right out here at the intersection of Hoosier Falls Road and Lone Mountain Trail. But as we saw, as those traffic volumes increased, as more people were making turns, that we needed a lot more signals. So it wasn't too long after that report was finalized in the Federal Register, because of the work I do, I get all these notices. And here's an opportunity, a notice of funding opportunity, or what we call a NOFO, for the Tiger Grant program. And Tiger means Transportation Investments Generating Economic Returns. So by saying investing in our infrastructure, we're going to see that economic benefit. So this hits my desk. And one of the things that is of interest is in 2017, it said they'll give special consideration to projects in rural areas, because this is a nationwide competition for these funds. And so it's something when they said that emphasis, and having just had that Sanderson Stewart report, I saw this, I sent it to Candace Carr-Strauss at the chamber, and they said, what do you think? And again, when you look at what they're emphasizing, so safety, affordable transportation, again, looking at the infrastructure condition. And what we know from Big Sky is Lone Mountain Trail here, Montana 64, is really the main street of the community. If this road fails, the community isn't going to do very well. And so with the information we just had, Candace said, well, what do you think? Can we hire you to put in a proposal for us? So he said, well, we're going to need Sanderson Stewart working with us, but hey, let's do it. Well, when we got into it, a lot of issues started coming up. One is, again, because Big Sky is unincorporated, who can apply, actually submit the proposal to USDOT, the Federal Highway Administration. So it's state, local, and tribal governments. So again, because we do not have that in Big Sky, we said, oh, okay, well, who can put in this proposal? So we said, well, a lot of the work's going to be on Montana 64 and DT's road, so let's go to them. So we go to MDT and say, hey, we'll do all the work. We'll get the proposal all ready. What you have to do is submit it. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. I was like, okay, that's kind of strange, but okay, let's go to the next likely entity, which was Gallatin County. The majority of the road is in the county. Obviously, for a lot of people getting to Big Sky to begin with, you're coming down 191 and you're traveling through Gallatin County. So we went to the commissioners and they said, okay, we'll do it. So it was like, great, we have someone to submit. And then we got into more discussion about it. And as we sat on webinars about how to put in the proposal, what you need to emphasize and those things, what we found out is just based on the sheer number of proposals that they get, you have usually less than a 6% chance to get it. And then as you're on these webinars, you're hearing from entities who say, okay, well, so we can take last year's proposal and update the information and then submit again. And so you say, now I'm also competing against communities that have put in a proposal 1, 2, 3, 4 times before. So as we were talking to members of the community about this proposal, I said, look, no one get your hopes up, because first of all, our odds of winning are really, really slim, just when you look at those basic odds. And again, it was just like, hey, we're going to put in a good proposal. We'll see what happens. So working with Sanderson Stewart, we put a good proposal together. It includes a benefit cost analysis to say, yes, all these improvements we're going to make are going to pay off. And then working with Gallatin County, we got it submitted. So first of all, I said, we're not going to know until probably late summer of 2018 that a selection was made. So as people are like, when are we going to hear? When are we going to hear? I said, July, August 2018. I said, again, odds of us winning are about 5%, so no one get your hopes up. Well, lo and behold, we actually got selected. I remember getting an email that went out to a bunch of people and said, oh my God, we won. This was in early March. And I was like, what do you mean? Senator Daines sent out a press release saying Big Sky was selected. Gallatin County, the proposal got selected. So that can't be right. First of all, we're probably not supposed to hear it for another 6 months. And if we had a, less than a 1 in 20 chance, and we actually got selected, that's hard to believe. So I went to the senator's site. I didn't see the press release, and I kept refreshing the site. Finally, in about half an hour, it popped up, and I was like, oh my God, it actually happened. One of the unique things that happened then is once it was like, wow, we got the money. This was in March of 2018. Unfortunately, Federal Highway Administration knew they had one more chance to get out the next round of Tiger Grant funding. So that was their emphasis, is like, hey, we picked who got selected this year, now let's get the next round up, which meant there was about a 15-month gap from when we were selected till the agreement was actually signed between Gallatin County and USDOT to get the grant in place. So we had that delay, mostly on the federal side, saying, hey, we're emphasizing getting this next round of funding out, not getting a contract signed with the folks who, were just selected. So that delayed it quite a bit as well. So now it's time for construction, and we'll hear from Danielle now about that process. Also, through that grant, part of the funding was going to getting vehicles for Skyline, the Big Sky Transportation District, 6 vans and 4 big motor coaches for the Link Express service, which is the service that connects the greater Bozeman area to Big Sky. So we're looking forward to this being a busy year. We know all that construction's not going to get done in a single construction season, so we'll probably have a couple years of it in the area, but it's going to be transformative for the community. As Danielle will probably talk about, and from what we saw from the 2017 report, we know that there's going to be even more to do as this community grows. Again, more intersections, more traffic signals and those things. So certainly this will be a big step forward for the community, but we know certainly not all of the problems are going to get solved with this funding. And so with that, I will turn it over to Danielle for her discussion part of this.
Good morning. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Thanks, David. My name is Danielle Scharf, and I work for Sanderson Stewart, and I have been partnering with David, the Chamber, and many others over the years to help with this effort of implementing the transportation infrastructure improvements in Big Sky. Hopefully you all can see my screen and you can hear me okay. If you do have any challenges at any time with hearing me, please be sure and let me know. This is kind of a little awkward to present to a room full of people when I'm the one that's virtual, and I apologize for that. I just have another meeting here this morning starting at 9 o'clock, and I thought this would be the best way for me to try to do both things this morning. So thanks for your understanding and patience. But I'm excited to be here today to talk a little bit more about the Tiger Grant project. Caitlin also asked me to talk a little bit about how transportation infrastructure improvements are identified. And so in order to address that question, I thought it would help to revisit that 2017 transportation study that David just talked about. And so I'm going to talk, a little bit about some of the same things that he just did, but I'll go into a little bit more detail too in how we did our analysis and our future volume projections in particular. So we can kind of look at this as a case study for how improvements are first identified through the planning effort at the beginning and then implemented through design and construction with the Tiger Grant project. So before I move on, I'd just like to acknowledge a few other project partners, including Staley Engineering, who designed several of the project areas on the Tiger Grant project, the Big Sky Chamber and the Big Sky Community Organization, who have both been great local partners and instrumental in moving this effort forward. And then the three agencies involved. So Gallatin County is leading the effort, as David mentioned, as the recipient and administrator of the Tiger Grant funds. And Jamie Grabinski, I believe, is in the room with you there today, and she is willing to help me answer questions as well about the project. We've also had a lot of involvement from the Federal Highway Administration, since the Tiger Grant funds are federal funds. They have a pretty integral role in the project. And then the Montana Department of Transportation, or MDT, has also had direct involvement because Highway 64 is an MDT route. So the kind of the typical process for identifying transportation infrastructure is through a long-range transportation master plan. So typically that is a regional plan, like a citywide plan, for example. But it can also be a corridor study or a sub-area plan. And as David just told you, this process to get where we are today in Big Sky actually began back in 2016 with those listening sessions that the Western Transportation Institute and the Chamber hosted. And then one of the big recommendations that came out of that initial review was to conduct a more thorough study. And that's when they hired our firm, Sanderson Stewart, to take a more thorough look at primarily traffic safety and operations within the Big Sky community. So this first graphic that I have on my screen now shows the study area for that project. And it started at the 191 intersection on the east end and went all the way up to the terminus, the west end of Highway 64 near Big Sky Resort and Moonlight Basin. So that was kind of the western end of the project. We really focused primarily on Highway 64 and much less on Highway 191. And that is primarily because MDT has classified Highway 64 as an off-system route. And that means they have funding for maintenance, but no real dedicated source of funding for future improvements. Whereas Highway 191, on the other hand, is an on-system route that is eligible for state and federal funding. And MDT also recently completed a corridor study for Highway 191 as well. So our study included the evaluation of 12 intersections along the corridor. Many of those were identified as areas of concern by the community, and then we added several others that we were looking at for other nearby planning projects anyway, so it just made sense to include them. We already had the data. And I want to point out the county line here too. As you know, the project area is split between Gallatin and Madison County. When we did this study, we went through a public review process with both counties, and both counties adopted the plan in 2017. So here's a quick look at the existing conditions. Again, these were based on 2016 and 2017 volumes, but they show our existing turning movement counts for AM and PM peak hours. They show our capacity calculation results, which is a letter designation called level of service that kind of shows how well the intersection is currently operating during those peak periods. And it also shows speed limits and turn lane warrants. We found that many of the intersections warranted turn lanes under existing conditions back in 2016 and 2017. Overall, you see a lot of green on here. That shows that operations are pretty favorable overall. I think if we went back and recounted all of these intersections and redid the analysis today, we would probably see some less favorable conditions since volumes have gone up since then. Whoops, sorry, I gotta go back one. The other thing we did as part of our existing conditions analysis is we reviewed crash data for a 10-year period from 2006 to 2016. And there were a total of 182 crashes along the corridor during that time period. And this figure summarizes the location of the crashes along the corridor. So the miles across the x-axis here correspond to the mile markers in the aerial image below. So we saw that there was clearly, the largest spike at the 191 intersection in terms of number of crashes, with some smaller spikes over kind of that first mile or so to the west of 191. And the other spike we see out here is at the Ussel Falls intersection. Keep in mind, though, that a lot of this data was from before that signal was installed at Ussel Falls. We did also look at animal vehicle crashes. That was something that was important to the community and something we looked at with this study as well. And there were 25 reported animal impacts. That probably doesn't include all of them. Those are just the ones that were reported that we had access to. But you can see the majority occurred within that first half mile or so west of 191. And overall, the crash rates and severity rates that we calculated through this analysis showed that there really was not any higher rates than statewide averages. So we didn't find any crash trends that would be eligible for safety funding through MDT. So our next step then was to look at future development. And this is an important component of determining future infrastructure needs, whether it's transportation, water, sewer, any sort of infrastructure. We're always kind of looking into the future to see what the needs are going to be. So we based our projections on the assumption that all of the developments that you see here would fully build out within the next 20 years. And we understand that may seem aggressive. We did hear that feedback at the time we were doing the study, but the time frame is somewhat arbitrary. I mean, it could easily take 40 years or even longer for that level of development, but we just thought it was important to consider what the transportation system might look like once all of this planned development is complete. So as a check to see whether or not that level of projection is reasonable, we looked at historic volumes. You saw this slide in David's presentation too. Montana Department of Transportation has a count station on Highway 64 west of Little Coyote. And so we use that to look back at historic growth rates, dating all the way back to 1992 with just over 2,000 vehicles per day, up to 2016 at the time of the study with about 7,700 vehicles per day. And the growth rate associated with that is 4.7%. That's an annual growth rate. And that's a pretty high growth rate compared to other communities across the state. Our projected volumes that we used with the development projections over 20 years resulted in a 4.34% annual growth rate. So that's pretty close to the 4.7 historic. So we felt like that was a pretty good check for the order of magnitude to tell us that it was reasonable. Now, if we look at 2012 to 2016, that's more of like a 9 to 10% growth rate. And that would be pretty aggressive if we were going to assume it would continue at that rate for 20 years. That would result in some pretty high volumes. Now, I've just added this green line here too with some more recent data. Since the study was completed, I added 2017, 18, 19, and 20. And you can see that through 2019, it kind of continued at that same high rate and then leveled off in 2020. So it'll be interesting to see what the 2021 volumes look like. I have a feeling there will be an increase again based on what I've seen so far. But that's how we're tracking so far relative to the projections that we had in the study. It'll be interesting to continue to track that over time too, to see how it continues to increase. So then we take those volumes, those growth rates, and we project out our 10-year and 20-year volume horizons. So this graphic shows the 10-year volumes and the results of the same capacity analysis and turn lane warrants that we conducted for existing conditions. So you can see we end up with a few more intersections that drop to level of service C. We even have a level of service F over here at Big Pine. And then we also found that there were a few more turn lanes warranted between existing conditions and 10-year volumes. But again, many of them were warranted just based off of existing conditions. And then here's the 20-year volumes. And again, we see further degradation in the level of service at many of the intersections. Quite a few Fs start to appear with those higher 20-year volumes. So then we use those volumes and those results to test different scenarios for recommended improvements. So we look at traffic signals, we look at turn lanes, all of the different tools we have in our toolkit to try to make improvements for the corridor. And we test them again with the same capacity analysis. And these were the recommendations that came out of the study. The quick highlights are turn lanes are all highlighted in green, the areas where turn lanes are recommended. The blue highlighting represents areas primarily where signage improvements were recommended, wildlife warning signage on the east end and curb warning signage upgrades on the west end. And we actually broke these, well, we also had intersection control too, several more traffic signals being warranted, traffic signals or roundabouts that should be considered at the major intersections going forward. And most of these recommended improvements were broken out into short-term improvements of 0 to 5 years, medium-term improvements of 5 to 10 years, and then long-term improvements of 10 to 20 years. So several other recommendations in the study included elimination of the on-street parking on Highway 64 west of 191 due to safety concerns there. Like I mentioned, wildlife signage and curve warning signage. The study also included many bike and pedestrian facility recommendations, including pathways along Highway 64 and grade separated crossings across Highway 64. And then there were also recommendations for the continued expansion of the Skyline Transit System. So as you heard from David, conversations about a Tiger Grant application started very soon after the transportation study was complete. And as you know, Big Sky doesn't really have the ability to fund those infrastructure improvements the same way an incorporated city does. And as we already heard, MDT wasn't going to be able to program funds for those improvements since Highway 64 is an off-system route. So the community recognized that it was going to take something substantial like a Tiger Grant. And luckily we had David as a resource to help prepare that application. And thanks to the hard work of many people, we were successful in getting that grant funding, which is very exciting. So this slide shows a summary of the projects that were ultimately included in the Tiger Grant application. And these are primarily based on the short-term and medium-term improvements from the transportation study. So again, you see the left turns highlighted in green, the signage upgrades highlighted in blue. We have the signal upgrades at 191 and the elimination of the on-street parking to the west of 191. We also added bus pullouts within that area. We have also added a traffic signal at Little Coyote. That was not part of the original application, but as we got underway on the design process, it became apparent pretty quickly that volumes had increased enough that warrants were now met at that location. And the county was able to add it to the project by amending their contract with FHWA. So that traffic signal is now included. Also includes the pedestrian underpass to the west of Little Coyote and the pathway along Little Coyote and the pedestrian bridge to get us all the way from the main trail along Highway 64 to the Big Sky Community Park. We also designed a pathway extension along Highway 64 from Big Pine to Andesite, this stretch right here, if you can see my cursor. We actually were not able to get the easement, unfortunately, that we needed for that piece of the project, the way it was designed. So we are now looking at redesigning the pathway with some retaining walls in order to keep it in MDT's right-of-way. We ended up pulling that path out of the bid set of plans so that we could work towards completing that redesign without holding up the rest of the project. So we still intend to bid it as a separate project, assuming the funding is available to do so. Our plan is still to build it, but it is not going to be bid with the rest of the improvements. So this next slide here shows the overall project timeline. You can see we started back in the fall of 2019 with the design, and we submitted our 100% design plans in June of 2020. We have since made a few revisions to the plans, like pulling out the andesite pathway, like I mentioned, as we've worked through the right-of-way process. But the design was mostly complete last summer. And ever since then, we've been working through right-of-way acquisition. Unfortunately, this process has taken us quite a bit longer than any of us had hoped. But unfortunately, a lot of that's just kind of out of our control. We just have to be patient and wait for that process to work its way through. We had originally hoped to have that complete last winter so that we could bid the project during the winter, but it has drug out into spring. I'm happy to report, though, that we are due to receive the last 2 signed agreements this morning. And MDT has already been working on certifying the right-of-way, so we can proceed right into bidding the project. Our invitation for bids will hit the paper this Sunday, May 2nd, and we will open bids at the County Commission meeting on May 25th. So we're moving right along directly into the bidding process immediately after getting those last 2 signed agreements. Then we're anticipating that it will likely take approximately 4 weeks after that to get all of our necessary approvals in order from FHWA and the county and get the contracts in place. But we are hoping for a notice to proceed in June or early July. We do intend to schedule another community update, likely in June, after the contractor is on board, so we can tell you more details about the sequencing of the project, the traffic control, and answer some of those questions that we're sure you have that will require input from the contractor. Then the sequencing will be determined by the contractor, but there are 2 project areas that must be included in the first year, and those include the signal upgrades at US 191 and the left turn lanes adjacent to Powder Light subdivision. Since that project has site developments that are contingent on those left turn lanes being constructed, we've all agreed that it's important to get those completed as early as possible in the overall construction schedule. We are expecting construction to take 2 full construction seasons, possibly extending into a 3rd since we are starting later this year than we would have liked. It is possible we'll extend into 2023, but our goal is to get them going as soon as possible this year so that we can keep as much of it into 2 seasons as possible. Here's the project website for more information. There isn't a ton on there right now, but this is where we will be posting updates as we get into construction. Gallatin County has committed to providing ongoing updates throughout construction, and that'll include weekly updates to the same list of individuals that received updates for the bridge deck project last summer. And again, updates on the project website, like I mentioned, as well as social media updates. And this will all be coordinated by Whitney Burns, the county's communications coordinator. So now we'd like to open it up for questions. As I mentioned, Jamie Grabinski from Gallatin County is there with you. She is the grants coordinator and has been leading this effort on behalf of the county. She is happy to answer questions, as am I, and I'm sure David as well. I do also have the plans handy and on my screen. If there are specific questions about project areas, we can take a look at those. I just didn't put them in the presentation because that would have taken another 20 minutes to go through. So, but yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So a long and involved process, but we're getting close to actually where you'll see that progress and we'll see that construction start and things start happening. So questions anyone has?
And as a quick reminder for our people viewing from home, you can send a chat to the submit questions here in the chat function, email info@bigskychamber.com, or react in the Facebook Live video. Some of you already have, so thank you so much. All right, we'll start with our first question. Do you anticipate requesting nighttime work in the RFP bid documents?
We aren't requiring it. It is not currently a requirement in the bid documents. We are certainly willing to talk with the contractors about those types of options, though. I think whatever we can do to get the work done as quickly as possible in a short construction season, I think the county and MDT are willing to consider those options, but we have not required it.
How long are the left turn lanes? Will they be able to be 100 foot plus for at least 4 cars?
The length of each turn lane varies a little bit by by the queue length that we calculate in our traffic analysis, but we also have to have a certain length for deceleration as well. So they aren't all the same length, but they are pretty long. There should be way more than enough storage for 4 cars in almost every case. You can see they're quite long.
Perfect, thank you. Could you please expand on the andesite easement and why that has been problematic? And if you have any graphic available for the workaround pathway being pursued?
Yeah, good question. So I don't have that one open. I could pull it up. We did have an alignment for the andesite pathway that started at Big Pine and stayed in the MDT right-of-way initially. So it kind of started right here and went up the hill probably about until this general area. And then we crossed outside of the right-of-way and went up on top of the bench. MDT's right-of-way line kind of coincides with the top of the slope where the bench is up top. So we left the right-of-way about in this location. And then through here and up at the top, we were on private property. So the pathway came along here and intersected andesite on private property. We were not able to get that easement. I think initially we thought there was a chance that we might be able to, but in the end we could not get it. So we are now redesigning it to keep the path inside the right-of-way with retaining walls along the path here on this slope in order to build it in that space. And then I can also open the other bike and pedestrian plans too and show you those as well for the other trails. Give me 1 second here.
And I'll just note for those of you who have go to Bozeman a lot on the way up to the M, that's kind of what happened. There was that pathway to get people up to the M, and talking to some of the landowners in the easement, they ended up, if you've seen that, doing the same thing, using a retaining wall and building that in the MDT right away. And so as Danielle was saying, that's going to be similar to what's going to happen here. So it just takes, as she said, a little more time to go back and redesign and say, what is that going to take to do that bit of the project? But as she said, they basically pull that out and to say everything else can proceed, and then we'll bring it back when that design gets done.
And here are the plans for the other bike and pedestrian improvements. This is one overall sheet that shows the tunnel at Little Coyote and then the pathway along Little Coyote. We have a crossing here near the Big Sky Water and Sewer District to get to the other side where the park is located. The pedestrian bridge is located right here. So those are the other trail improvements that will be included.
And as part of this too, for any of the turn lanes, as those get built, if they impact the current path, then that path gets rebuilt. So there's a few places where the turn lanes will impact the current path, and that was just part of that whole design work was then to go, okay, now we have to shift the path over to make sure that we don't interrupt that ability for people to use that for walking and biking.
Great, thank you guys. Are there any questions here? All right, sounds good. Oh, thank you, Steve.
With the time that has elapsed since the original concept and the award of contracts is coming up, and construction costs going through the roof around here, we anticipate major scope reductions as a practical consequence of the timing of this thing?
Well, I think a lot of that will be determined when the bids are open. There was a fair amount set aside in a contingency fund for this, but as you said, a lot of time has elapsed. Certainly, the cost of materials have changed a lot since when we priced this out, but you know, we're fairly confident, and that was one of the things that Danielle talked about, was that the signal at Little Coyote wasn't originally part of the Tiger grant, but it said the language was such that similar efforts to what you're doing can be added in if, you know, if the money is there. So at the time, we felt that there was enough money left to, we could include that signal. Now, as we open those bids, we might look and go, it looks to be a little bit more expensive than we thought. But, you know, the majority of the work is pretty basic. I mean, you've got, you know, pretty good spaces on either side of the road right now to say, you know, I'm just adding 10, 12 feet of asphalt here. I'm not doing anything, you know, super exotic. So we're hoping that when we open the bids, we go, it's a little more than anticipated, but because we have that contingency fund, that the funding is there to do what we said we were going to do.
And we also have been providing cost estimates with each of our design submittals, and just recently updated them again with our bid set submittal. So I think, you know, we've been looking at recent unit prices from other bids in the area as we've been making those updates. So we feel pretty comfortable with our numbers, but again, like David mentioned, having that contingency is key in case they do come in high. And we know right now is not the ideal time to be bidding. Ideally, it would have been last January or February. But this is where we are, and I don't think anyone wants to wait. You know, if bids come in crazy, crazy high, we could make the decision to hold off and rebid it later. But I think we're all anxious to get the project going.
If costs do come in too high, have you identified the priorities? What would potentially get dropped? How does that look along with the Tiger Grant qualifications?
Well, yeah, first we have to start by saying, what did we initially say we were going to do, which is just about everything but the signal at Little Coyote. So that might be one of the first ones to come out. And then the rest would be looking at that data that Danielle had to say, okay, some of these things are warranted based on current conditions. Others might be that 5, 10 years out. So you'd say, what is warranted now? Well, that's what we have to look at first. And that's also what's more safety versus convenience. And so those things would be factored into any decision of saying, yeah, if we have to take some things off the table, what do we do? But we're hoping, as Danielle said, based on current estimates and those things, that we will actually be able to do what we all want to get done.
Any other questions?
So you were saying that MT64 is classified one way, and that means that it is not qualified for additional funding. Is there any way to change that classification?
It would take a lot of work. I mean, as Danielle said, it's a state highway, but what they say is off system. So again, they have money to maintain it, but not to put money into improvements, which is why this Tiger grant was so important. And as the community followed when it was like, let's put in a traffic signal, and MTD said, great, tell us how you're going to pay for it. So, you know, it's just one of those things about being in unincorporated areas to say, yes, if we want to continue to make those improvements, how do we do it? I think Steve and others know a lot of the history of trying to get it designated as a state highway when Big Sky was starting a long time ago. And so a lot of things around that. And so I think for now, we're dealing with it the best we can, as we've said, in an unincorporated area that really straddles two counties. Working together, we've been able to do a lot. And, unless something major changes in the future, that's how we're going to continue to address it.
Perfect, thank you. So you identified additional lights in the refresh, but that's not a part of the original Tiger grant. So are those just FYIs for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we see the community continue to grow, we'll verify, as Danielle said, that those numbers, based on our projections, we'll do some traffic counts in the future and say, do we see those numbers holding up? And if so, to say, yeah, there's a couple more of those signals that we're going to have to look at and say, how do we fund those? Because they're probably going to be necessary. Another thing is, once that second lane hopefully goes in, is to look at those breaks in traffic and say, does that allow enough room for some of these people to be making turns then? Because there is that break in traffic due to the new signal, and what does that look like? So again, to say, here's what we thought would happen, let's go back and look at that data at some point relatively soon, and then say, if those numbers are still valid, then yes, those signals are warranted. We're going to have to figure out how to pay for them.
And MDT does like to see that it meets the warrants before they're installed. So we can identify it as a future improvement based on future volumes, but until we can demonstrate that the warrants are met by the volumes on the ground, we don't get to install the signal. So Little Coyote is an example where we do now meet the warrants, so they are letting us put it in now. The others will have to come in the future as their warrants are met.
Perfect. Are there any additional questions here? All right, thank you so much. Okay, let me just check. Do we have anything else? Okay. Thank you guys so much for your insight into the Tiger Grant process. We're looking forward to it. Thank you, Danielle, for speaking, and again for your sponsorship this morning.
Yes, thank you. Sorry again I couldn't join you in person, but thanks for letting me join virtually. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. All right.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions and engagement in this process. And now I invite Laura Seafang from the Big Sky Community Housing Trust to talk about the importance of investing in affordable housing. Thank you, Laura. I'll figure it out. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. I'm Laura Seafang. I'm here speaking, as Caitlin said, about another infrastructure issue that sometimes some places might not think about, but it's really how affordable housing really becomes an infrastructure issue for us. And I'm representing the Big Sky Community Housing Trust. This organization is an independent nonprofit. We spun off from HRDC, who was our founding organization, really that came into place when the chamber did a study about 5 years back now to look at the housing issue here in Big Sky and helped develop a housing action plan. So that was really a great impetus to try to give us an understanding of just how critical our problem is here in Big Sky, and then to focus on developing an action plan with some concrete solutions that we can move forward to. So I know Caitlin's going to be mine.
Technical difficulty.
But that's okay. So I'm going to talk while we look for them.
I appreciate you, Laura.
So our action plan study that came up in 2017, as well as the Big Sky Visioning study that happened in 2019, came up with the same story, which is that over 90% of our residents think the lack of affordable housing is one of the most critical problems this community faces right now. In fact, we estimate currently that almost 75% of our local workforce is traveling that canyon from Belgrade and Bozeman to get here to work every day. Our growth in jobs and the development here has just been, as we all know, exponential, and our housing for workers has just not kept up at all at that same rate. We've also had an incredible increase in vacation rentals where people are flipping their short-term rent, their condos into short-term rentals because they can make an awful lot of money on them, but that's just depleted the amount of long-term rentals that are available for our local workforce. So we estimate that there are shortages in both ownership opportunities for local workers as well as rental opportunities. In fact, our estimate is that we're about at least 300 units shy for rentals, and that number's going up all the time as we keep losing more of the current rentals for local workers. So this is exactly the slide we want to be on, so just stay right there. Actually, I'm going to go for one slide. I'm not sure what I'm pointing at. Okay, here we go. So like roads and bridges, affordable housing really is a long-term asset that helps communities thrive and have families that actually live here, that have our working families that can actually be here and be part of the community. So it's something that we've got to invest in if we want to have a strong community for the long haul. And you can see some of the facts here about what having strong housing product will do for the community. It bolsters productivity and economic growth because it keeps lower income people able to move here and stay here. I can't tell you how many workers we hear have to leave Big Sky even though they love it because they just can't find housing. It actually helps our economy in that our employers can hire and retain people. There's not an employer in town that won't tell you one of their biggest issues is they just can't hire workers, and it's because there's nowhere for them to live. We know when people live in their community where they work, they can get involved. They can be very actively engaged to help keep us a true community. And then just studies nationwide show some of this data here on the bottom, that when children live in the community in affordable housing where their parents work, that they become stronger adults in the long run. You can see some pretty big statistics that say they're going to do better in school. They are more likely to be productive adults themselves. So certainly something we just want to strive for here. But building affordable housing in Big Sky is incredibly challenging, and there's some developers in the room who can attest to that. It's a very expensive place to buy land, and there's not a lot of land available for this sort of housing. Our water sewer right availability has been a big roadblock in the past. We're super excited by the resort tax increase that passed last year that helped fund the expansion of our water sewer plant, and in coordination with that, the agreement was that 500 of the water sewer rights, which are called SFBs or single family equivalents, are going to be allocated to affordable workforce housing development. So that was a huge thing that allowed us to the opportunity to potentially develop some properties that didn't have water sewer rights. We've had some fairly restrictive zoning rules in place and worked with the county to rewrite the Big Sky zoning regulations that made more properties appropriate and available to be developed, either for accessory dwelling units or ADUs, but also to put workforce housing on many other properties here in Big Sky if we're able to purchase those. But then also we lack, just like we were talking with the transportation funding, because we're an unincorporated community, it's just even more challenging to come up with funds to be able to put into workforce housing projects. So while the resort tax has been very generous in funding these projects, we're competing with many other agencies in town that are looking to fund their initiatives. And it's not a predictable source of income that we're going to have to continue to work on this problem. In the Montana laws and our unincorporated status really make it difficult for us to assess any kind of impact fees here, which are what are typically used in many other parts of the country that are trying to deal with this issue. And because we have very high building costs and relatively high wages for our workers as compared to other places around, we often we aren't able to apply for and receive federal assistance that might typically be available in other areas. So lots of challenges here. This is a really busy slide, but what I really want to emphasize here is that it shows we've got a wide spectrum of needs of housing for folks here in Big Sky. So AMI stands for average median income, and that's kind of a countrywide way that they measure how much money people make. And the rule of thumb is that people, any of us, shouldn't be spending more than a third of our income on our housing costs. So what we look at is what income level do we have in our county and what housing options do we have for us here in Big Sky in each of those areas. So on the very left side of the chart is people that are making only 30% of the average median income. And those tend to be maybe our seasonal workers. And this housing solutions that are probably most appropriate for them are things like dorm room kind of things or converting hotel rooms into housing for them. And then as you move all the way up to the far right side of this arch, you can see even at 200%, people earning 200% of average median income, they still often can't qualify for a mortgage on what an entry-level home costs here in Big Sky. So we need to be helping people with different housing solutions all the way along the spectrum. So it means designing different kinds of rental options for people who are at the more on the left end of this scale, and then different home ownership opportunities through the middle, and maybe just some down payment assistance help with people who are trying to buy homes but can't afford to get into those homes at this point. So it's not a one size fits all. We have to come up with lots of different solutions to fit all the different people that are struggling to stay in Big Sky because they just can't afford to live here. So where we've evolved at this point is that the two major employers in town that are running the resorts and the club are really taking responsibility for their seasonal workers. So typically the solutions there have been building dorm room kind of things, converting hotels, master leasing some condos. So for those people that are just breezing through Big Sky for a season or so at a time, the Big Sky Community Housing Trust is not necessarily focusing on those groups. We're letting the resorts that generate that need focus on those people. So the Housing Trust is more focusing on people who've decided we'd really like to stay in Big Sky. We'd like to live here full time. And the things that we've put in place are adding some deed restriction home ownership units. I'm going to show you a little slide on that. We want to build income-based rental units, which means we'll build rental opportunities for folks and they'll be charged based on the amount of money they make. So we're going to try to keep in that affordable, less than a third of their income going towards their housing costs. We're also focusing on trying to convince condo owners to flip their units, the rental units, from short-term back to long-term. And provide some incentive for that, as well as provide some down payment assistance for people trying to buy property that are in certain income qualifications. So our home ownership opportunity, hopefully you know about this one. We're just about wrapping it up. It's behind the softball fields and tennis courts, our Meadowview properties. We have 52 condominiums there, 2 bedrooms or studio units. They're slated for a particular set of our marketplace that's ready to buy, but has to make enough money to get a mortgage, which they go to a regular mortgage company to get their mortgage. And then the unique thing about this is we're able to sell them at about 40% below market rate right now because the land itself was purchased with resort tax dollars. And the land resides in a community land trust, which Big Sky Community Housing Trust manages. And what we're selling to the buyers is the improvements on the land. So they are buying it with a ground lease, and there's a restriction on it. They get this benefit of buying something at 40% below market rate, But the trade-off is they can only have 2% per year maximum appreciation on the property before they decide to resell it. And the reason we do that, we found that is the model that has worked best across the country and other areas that have been trying to deal with this problem. Because you want to make sure that when these units get resold, they don't all of a sudden go to market rate and then they're out of the range for the next worker that wants to buy it. These things are deed restricted forever to be sold to Big Sky workers. And with that appreciation cap, when they get resold, they'll still be at a rate that's affordable to the next worker that needs to buy it. So we're real happy with these units, and I'll tell you what, if you talk to anyone that's bought them, they're over the moon, ecstatic with this opportunity to buy in Big Sky. Our average person that bought there has already been here working for 7 years and never felt they could touch anything. The average person had already moved 10 times since they've been in Big Sky, which is really nothing I wish on anyone. So our Rent Local program is where we're trying to target to convince condo owners to rent to locals. So we know that less than 30% of the homes in Big Sky are occupied by people that live here full time. So there's lots of stuff out there that's on the short-term rental market or not, or just sitting empty. So we've been trying to do a number of things to convince people that we can help them find really strong, good locals to rent to. The Housing Trust is trying to take away all the concerns an owner might have about renting. And so we're providing many things to try to smooth that out for them. I want to talk just a minute about partnership opportunity or program we just launched a little while ago to try to build more rental units for our local workers. We're partnering with Lone Mountain Land Company and that property along the entry corridor where the old American Bank building was. We're striving to get approvals here to put apartment buildings that will be both for Lone Mountain Land Company employees, but also for Big Sky employees in general to live in. There'll be a combination of 1, 2, 3 bedroom apartments as well as dorm style apartments to meet a variety of needs there. One of the challenges, as I mentioned, is funding. Our estimate is that we'll need at least $85 million to build 500 or more, because that number is going up all the time, long-term units in the next 5 years. So our funding sources here in Big Sky are resort tax funds, philanthropic donations, but also looking to try to have other people in the community who are very serious about this problem contribute in meaningful ways. We've also applied for low-income housing tax credit program on the project I just mentioned, which is federal funds. We will hear within a few weeks whether we're actually able to move forward and make it to the final round. There's 14 people that applied for these funds in Montana this year, and usually they fund about 3 or 4, so it's a very competitive process. We're looking for letters of support from the community to help Montana Board of Housing decide this is worthwhile for us. We've applied for $7 million for the project, and it's really imperative that we get that. I'll just show you that other resort communities, we've taken a good look at how do they get their monies to fund affordable housing. And you can see almost all of them have some kind of an impact fee or a sales tax or a real estate transfer tax that funds it on a dependable level year after year. And as much as none of us like to think about more taxes, we got to figure out some way here in Big Sky to have a dependable source of funding if we truly think we're going to address this issue. So check out our website. We've got lots of great input and testimonials from people that will just tell you how housing has changed their lives. We encourage you to just take a look at it, see how important this is. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of things planned in the Housing Trust. We're looking for more partnerships with local developers to keep figuring out how to build more units. Our goal is to get another 50 to 100 units converted to long-term rentals in the next year. We keep wanting to give down payment assistance to folks who need it to help buy their house and push the idea of finding dependable funding sources for this project and for this problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Now, David?
Well, this is going to be quick. You probably, for those of you who live in Big Sky, have hopefully heard that there'll be an election. Your ballots are due by May 4th, next Tuesday. And one of the issues on the ballot is the expansion of the Big Sky Transportation District boundaries. The Big Sky Transportation District was formed 30 years ago in 1991, when obviously this community was a lot smaller than it is. And so initially through what was called Snow Express and for almost 15 years now as Skyline, the Big Sky community, or the Big Sky Transportation District, has provided public transportation services in the community. So working with the Gallatin County Commissioners and the Madison County Commissioners to talk about, you know, the reality is the boundaries of the district don't match the services, the service area that we're doing. So what we're hoping is that people will recognize that. One of the things is that our largest source of local funding, other than the Federal Transit Administration funds where we receive through the Montana Department of Transportation, the resort tax is our biggest source of local match. And so what we're hoping is that people will say, yes, we'll expand those boundaries. It better reflects the service area that the transportation district serves. It better reflects where your money is coming from, which is the resort area district. And we know that Big Sky is continuing to grow, and so we need those boundaries to be expanded. A little bit of a busy slide, but the dark green is the transportation district. So it extends from just about the Bighorn Center, so just north of the intersection of 191 and 64, basically follows 64 up to Big Sky Resort. There are parts of the town center that aren't in the district. Certainly places like Moonlight Basin are not in the transportation district. So what we were hoping is that if people vote yes on this, is that the boundaries of the transportation district will expand to the dark red line, which are the boundaries of the resort area district. And I think it was a couple of years ago, one of these eggs and issues, again, with Big Sky being unincorporated, the discussion was there's a lot of these special districts in the community. And so a lot of people might say, well, am I in all of them or in some of them? What is it? And the discussion at that time was the more we can have all these districts have the same boundary, it's pretty easy. And the resort tax district boundaries are the most expansive. So the more all these different special districts can maybe expand and have that bigger boundary, it's easy to go, yes, the odds are if you live in Big Sky, you're in all these districts because they all have the same big boundary. So we're hoping that people will say yes. We need that to happen on both sides of the county line. So we need a majority of people in Madison County to say yes. We need a majority of people in Gallatin County to say yes. And the people who get the vote are those who would be in the new area. So if you're already within the boundaries of the transportation district, you don't get to vote on this. It's just the people who will be in that expanded area to vote on. So we hope that we get those results back and it's positive because we look forward to continuing to grow the services of Skyline to meet the needs of the growing community. So I think we'll open it back up for questions.
Yeah, just a few quick questions.
Laura, Brian?
One for you, David. Since we're so close to the Tuesday election date, are there local ballot boxes people should drop them in, or do they have to drive them to their county elections office?
There are two ballot drop-off boxes, one at the county courthouse and one at Longport School District office on Longport School. Those are the only two drop boxes for the district special in Gallatin.
Perfect. And so if people are voting right now for this election, they should drive it and not mail it?
Yeah, that's what our election office suggests right now is just to ensure if they're unpaid, to have time on, deadline on Tuesday, to drop them off in person. Because postmarks don't count, they have to be received to be counted.
Good to know. Thank you so much. Yes, and it's important to know that postmarks don't count
Yeah.
in these mail-in votes. Laura, can you speak to the importance of the housing trust owning the land and how that works?
Yeah, the reason we want to own the land is to keep the cost down for people we're selling the property to. So by putting it in what's a legal thing called a community land trust, it's really the community that's owning the land, and we could deed it so that it can never become something else. It can't get sold at market rate. So that's the whole idea. And by separating the land price from the improvement price, we're able to sell the product way cheaper to people.
That's wonderful. Clearly so many examples of partnership and creative thinking that really are getting these projects done. That's very exciting. Thank you. We are a little tight on time, and I apologize for robbing us of these questions, but one final question for David on this vote. Is there any financial obligation for this community if they vote yes?
No, right now, the Big Sky Transportation District doesn't levy any taxes. So expanding the boundaries is not going to all of a sudden create a tax for people. So no financial impact for people voting yes.
Sounds great. Okay, thank you guys so much for your time.
All right. I'm going to just quick wrap everything up for us before we take a quick break before our next part of the program. But thank you again to our presenters today. I really appreciate your time and commitment to projects here at Big Sky. Big Sky Chamber is proud to be the voice of business and to help convene these conversations and timely and relevant information to inform our community. So thank you again for being here and for supporting us. Quick introduction for those of you who may not know, my name is Anna Johnson. I'm the Director of Business Development at the Big Sky Chamber, and I just joined the team, had the honor of joining the Big Sky Chamber Visit Big Sky team last July, just right in the midst of a bunch of unknown and uncertainty for the business community. So it's been an interesting time. I've lived in Big Sky about 16 years, coming up on 16 years now, and just am very impressed with the collaboration, the dedication, the perseverance of the business community across the greater Gallatin Valley. So our mission at the Big Sky Chamber is we're the voice of business. We champion a healthy economy and work collaboratively to convene community stakeholders as a catalyst to improve the overall quality of life and of doing business here in our region. So we have these 4 strategic pillars that guide us on our initiatives, our efforts, and really to help support our member businesses. So our ultimate goal really is to help make Big Sky a sustainable community where people want to live, where families can reside, and where businesses and families can thrive. So we all know this has been a challenging year for a lot of us, and many of you out there are still in some form of abnormality with different events happening, kind of like the one today, a hybrid event. And we're seeing a lot of growth in the area, new businesses. We've had over 60 new member businesses join the chamber in the last year, 23 in 2021 so far. So our goal is really trying to meet your needs and meet the various needs of these different industries coming into our region. So we've brought new networking and opportunities for connection with the business community. We have small business roundtables monthly that are virtual, new member meetups that we're holding quarterly at the office, and Doing Business Right quarterly webinar series with the Vetus Group. So, trying to do as much for the business community, and we want to hear from you to really help meet your needs on what we can do to be helping you. I do want to quick say, as our community becomes vaccinated and more people are vaccinated, we're hoping to do more in-person events and having more connection opportunities. I am proud to say that our organization at the Chamber and Visit Big Sky is vaccinated now. Everyone is, so we're very proud of that. Quick sneak peek, I know we're running short on time, but we have a bunch of fun things coming up this year. Shred Day on May 7th is going to be an opportunity for businesses to destroy their documents safely and securely. And on June 22nd, Big Sky Resorts is partnering with us to host our 24th annual Black Diamond Business Awards dinner. And we're really excited for this opportunity to highlight Big Sky Resorts' new construction at the Vista Hall, but also to recognize our member businesses and community members who worked so hard this last year. Stay tuned on more details of that coming. We do have another quarterly new member meetup coming up July 8th, hopefully outside, weather permitting, at Fire Pit Park. And we hope to see you, our members there, and new members as well as returning member or existing members are welcome. Our very popular 406 golf tournament, it was postponed last year, but we'll be holding it September 2nd this year at Big Sky Resort Golf Course, and look forward to having a lot of people involved. It's always a really fun time, and sponsorship opportunities. Registration will be coming soon. And then aligning with our pillar of encouraging community infrastructure investment, we are pleased to bring back our 4th annual Community Building Forum this fall. And we're just love bringing and convening the developers, people who are working on projects here in Big Sky, to speak on current and upcoming projects to help inform our community of the excitement. I know I left this event last year really excited and just pleased to live in Big Sky where we have so much opportunity and amazing things coming. Quick little thing about next March 2022, we are working with the Montana Contractors Association and in conjunction with our Double Black Diamond members, RDO Equipment and Suffolk Construction on an exciting construction industry event surrounding technology, and that'll be held at the Montage Big Sky. So more details on that to come, but really looking to involve the construction industry community. Please do make sure you're signed up for our newsletters, our infrastructure updates that will be coming out this summer to keep you posted on the construction going on, keep you informed with timely updates, what's happening, as well as our calendar of events. And lastly, I want to give a big thank you to the entire Big Sky Chamber team and Visit Big Sky, Caitlin Cuisenberry, our programming and events manager, who made this program possible today. We have our Nicole Holm, our Visit Big Sky creative and marketing manager, who's doing a lot on that front right now, and Lori Wetzel, our compliance manager. And then our newest addition to the team, who is here in the audience with us, Bryn Ryder, is our Visitor Information Center coordinator, and we're looking forward to opening the Visitor Center come Memorial Day for the summer. So you likely know our former CEO, Candace, did move on in February, and quick update is that our boards are working on a current active search right now, hoping to have a new person in that position in the next couple of months, so stay tuned. Phew, we got a lot of excitement coming up. We really hope that you join us, continue the participation and engagement with the Chamber. Please reach out to Caitlin or myself at any time with questions or ideas. We love having new ideas come to us to help drive the programming going forward. So thank you again to our event sponsors, Big Sky Quarry, Lone Mountain Land Company, and Sanderson Stewart, and our Double Black Diamond members and Black Diamond members who made this event possible today. We appreciate your investment in our efforts and initiatives going forward. So we'll take a short break now. We'll get the tables set up for the County Commissioner meeting. Please grab some more food if you need, and please stay tuned for those of you joining virtually on this same link to have the special opportunity to engage with our local governance and our 2 county commissioner boards and our resort tax board. Thank you very much.
I don't think so. That was a lumber truck that they were on. That's that one, but. Where's he going? He's going up the hill. Mhm. No, I think it's probably harder backing down, backing up than it is backing down. Oh, he's turning around. Yeah, he's out of there. It's tight, but they're actually a pretty good working spot because it's a culvert at the very end. So they've got all that area. Oh, yeah, what if they had a house where that vacant lot is now back of Mike? And what if these people, the Las Vegas people, if they live there, they're going fucking crazy.
Everybody, thank you so much.
I'm here, I could be.
Thank you, everybody. And now we'll turn from the exit issue portion of the morning to the Gallatin Madison Joint County Commission meeting with, for the first time, the Big Sky Resort Tax Board. We're so grateful to be able to help facilitate action on local governance, and it's such an important opportunity to be able to engage with our government this way. So now I'll turn it to you all. Thank you so much.
Morning, everyone. Just to open the meeting, I'm gonna take the lead as chair of Gallatin County Commission. So welcome everyone to our April 29th, 2021 joint county commission meeting of Madison and Gallatin counties. And I suppose we'll start off with a quick introduction of who you've got in front of you. We are not segregated, we're pretty mixed up. So start with the commissioners.
Joe Skinner, Gallatin County Commissioner.
And Scott McFarland, Gallatin County Commissioner.
Jim Hart, Madison County Commissioner. And Zach Brown, Gallatin County Commissioner.
Ron Nye, Madison County Commissioner.
Sarah Buckton, Big Sky Resort.
Kevin Tremaine, Big Sky Resort Area District.
Steve Johnson, Missouri Area District.
Steve, do you want to sit with us?
I can do that.
Sit down, Joe.
Right here.
All right, Clay.
And again, welcome everybody. Thanks for hosting our joint meeting up here. We really appreciate getting together. We really missed last year's event. We don't get a lot of opportunities for our two counties to get together and hear what we're working on together. And missing a year was a big deal. So it sounds like we've got a lot of things to discuss today. Without any further ado, I suppose we can get started on the rest of the agenda. Our first item up is Patrick Lonergan from Gallatin County Emergency Management to discuss consolidation of emergency management program in Big Sky.
Good morning, Mr. Chairpersons, commissioners, board members. My name is Patrick Lonergan. I'm the Chief of Emergency Management and Fire. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the concept of consolidation of the emergency management program here in the Big Sky community. I believe that my counterpart from Madison County, Joe Brummel, is virtually on the meeting with us. Maybe, I can't really tell, but let's assume he's here. Back in 2019, Joe and I started speaking about the concept of consolidating the emergency management functions here in the Big Sky community. When we talk about emergency management, it's the four core functions of emergency management, as well as the hazardous materials and the wildfire programs that both of our county's programs manage. And really, it came back to the same reason that many of the other public safety related functions here in the Big Sky community have been consolidated, is the community split in half by a jurisdictional line. Whether you're a county government, you're a state or federal agency, all those are split in half. And for the most part, all those except for the emergency management functions have been consolidated into one organization managing that function for the entire community up here. I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but when we have two players trying to coordinate from a long ways away, or all the different partners out here in the community, whether it's an incident, a planned event, a planning activity, it just adds to the complication, amount of conversations, and makes it more challenging for the community, the agencies, and all our partners here in the community. So what Joe and I talked about is that it probably makes sense for the two counties to talk about, should we combine the emergency management responsibility under one of the county's programs up here in the Big Sky community, much like what's been done with law enforcement, search and rescue, the coroner, dispatch, and all those different things. So our ask for the commissioners today is to maybe have a little bit of discussion and give Joe and myself some direction on, is that something that you want us to work on, trying to get that formally consolidated in some function, and any direction, insight, or emphasis that you might want to see if that's something that the commission would like. And with that, I will stop, stand here, and answer any questions that you may have.
Anyone prepared for questions for Patrick?
I'll ask you a question. I think the big question, Patrick, is what's the cost and what's the ask from the commissions to accomplish that?
You bet. So there's some planning assumptions in this, but if we were to assume that it makes more sense, since many of the other functions up here have been consolidated into the Gallatin County side, for Gallatin County Emergency Management to take on this consolidation responsibility for the Big Sky area, our ask would be to help build capacity in our emergency management program. And we've been working hard to get away from just having a variety of jacks of all trades and generalists to do a little bit of everything and try and build our program with the future with people that specialize in certain areas. So we now have myself and as the chief, kind of focusing on higher level stuff, doing a lot of coordination stuff, and trying to get out of the jack of all trades business. We brought on about 2 years ago an operations training manager that focuses on making sure our systems are operational, people support our partners, supporting training activities, building that out. And then we're talking with the Gallatin County Commission right now about how can we bring on a position that we would call preparedness and mitigation manager. And that position is envisioned to support, have a dedicated person that kind of focuses on developing and maintaining actual written plans that we're required to have in our communities, as well as some of the specific stuff that I know Big Sky would like to see in this community. Then part of their time, they propose to focus on mitigation activities, largely being wildfire mitigation and managing those projects with the different partners throughout the county and the community here. And our goal is to holistically build capacity across everywhere that our program covers. The ask and the cost for that, I want to look at this as building capacity in our program, not so much as adding a position, although it ultimately comes back, we want to add a position, provide a better program to our overall service area. About $85,000 a year for that position, total cost. What we're looking at trying to do is fund 50% of that out of mitigation funding for wildfire mitigation. So that leaves a little over $40,000 unfunded for that position. So that's kind of the question of how do we build that gap capacity to support our entire program service area. And I don't have a good answer for what is fair specifically for, just community health kitchens or that increased capacity of the activities. That's the county portion and the additional program functions that we want to take on for wildfire mitigation and dedicated planning support. But that funding gap that we are looking at around $45,000. So how's that for a vague kind of answer? Without walking anybody into a corner on where that gap might come from.
So have you considered, I'll just call it a job description? Yeah.
Yes. We started proposing this position actually almost 3 years ago. And we have PAQ that we call it, that we use to develop the cost benefit that identifies functions that that position would do. It's not a full class spec, but it's what our HR department would build a class spec on the position.
Okay, Commissioner.
Patrick, it seems like there'd be more cost than just the position. Or is there going to be a person up here, have an office? And so like there's going to be some operational costs besides.
Yep. So the operational costs are a little easier to chisel away at. And I think that largely speaking, the operational costs, we have the ability to absorb in off of some of the grant funding that flow through our office on a regular basis. And I'm not too worried about that additional increase. The office space issue up here, again, I don't want to envision that this is a dedicated person that's always working up there. I want to propose this as how do we increase capacity, people that specialize in areas that will all rotate through the community. Currently, the sheriff's office provides a space when you come up here and work in the sheriff's office substation. Obviously, Big Sky Fire Department has proposed a new fire station coming, and that building's going to disappear. And what that looks like in the future for space, I think, is kind of up in the air at this point in time. I would propose that it would make sense that as we figure out where the sheriff's office is going to live, what the fire department's going to do, that we also take into account office space for the emergency management function in that planning process. How's that? Some more vagueness, but vision as I see it.
But that's going to be a cost.
It is, for sure. And Mike, again, I'm just weeding stuff out there, but what I would propose to the commissions is that might be a good thing to approach the sort of tax board about. It's the capital program space up here in Big Sky. That might be a good application to submit through that process.
How soon would you like this to happen?
So I think there's kind of two pieces. There's the technical, do we have one agency take over the coverage, and then there's the money piece of that. I don't know, it's hard to say. I would propose if we have time turnaround, it's always clean to do it at the beginning of the fiscal year. And I think if we could turn something around, we have some great examples, sheriff's office of agreements that are already in place this year. Probably turn that around in time for July 1st. Gallatin County has 2 wildfire mitigation projects, applications that are currently in the process of being submitted that would take effect if we receive them beginning of 23, fiscal 23-ish, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe federal fiscal 23 ending. What I intend to ask the Gallatin County Commission is to consider funding this new position before we receive performance pre-exposed grants, so that we can start doing the profit warning, doing the landowner assessments, the treatment plans with landowners, so that when those fuels programs come into place, we can actually start working immediately. We're not like, oh, we had grant money, let's try and hire a person to do the fill the position, let's maybe onboard them, maybe we have to do training with them, then they go out and start the assessment process, and you're, a year or more into the grant performance period, and you get tight on time. So that kind of down in the weeds and bigger picture, but my preference, if we can figure out how to make everything come together, would be to aim to try and do this sometime towards the beginning of state fiscal 22, just to try and front load some of these projects that are underway.
So I think I just heard you say something like ask the Gallatin County Commissioners to initially fund, which means Madison County would have to assist someone. We got an extra nickel.
There's a lot of details to work out, and Joe and the various staff and the guys can sure work out some of the details. And I think what would be helpful is this something that the 2 commissioners want us to pursue. And what do you see, if you have some intent in mind about what's important, there's some tasks that helpful. Whatever desire is or isn't.
I wonder if we should sit down, the 6 of us, and have a, obviously you and Joe also have a little bit more of a, here's what the job description is, here's what we hope this guy's going to do. I realize you attempted to explain that now, but probably better have a sit down. I don't care how soon.
We can make it.
Enforcement mitigation proof and then work in Madison County.
Yes, I believe they could. And Dustin and I are talking about that a little bit here. That, I don't see any reason why, the timeline, my words, meander, why we couldn't break, fuels projects that are happening, like future projects in the big city. Just eliminate that line and the same office management through the entire community. I don't know why that would be an issue. Dustin didn't see why that would be an issue either.
I really like the idea that kind of falls along with some of the things that we want to talk about with the 2 county commissions about just a more coordinated and consolidated effort to the efforts that we have here in Big Sky. I am curious how this position would interface with our fire department. We've been growing our fire department. I'd love to hear, the fire department's done a good job of annexing and really covering the Big Sky area. And I would certainly love to hear our fire department's thoughts on how this would interface. They've been staffing up. Is there some synergy? Maybe there's a shared position that could go with the fire department of the county. I like the idea of the person working here in Big Sky because your slide, I think, is really appropriate. That's what keeps me up at night here in Big Sky is wildfire. And I think, Dustin, how old's our emergency service plan for Big Sky? Pretty old. So we've got almost a 20-year-old fire management plan for a community that's experienced rapid growth over the last 20 years. I would love to see that updated. So I love the idea. I'd like to make sure we're being efficient with the dollars and the position.
Yeah, and I was going to ask a very similar question about the fire department here in the fire district, because if we're planning mitigation activities, is there a role for them both coordinating on the ground mitigation work? Because conceivably a lot of that work would benefit their mission and their services. Is there a role for staff coordination and staff support and potentially funding
Yes, applied throughout a lot of areas that aren't just in the fire district, that also can benefit and have projects take place in them, or future projects. So, while they exist in Big Sky, they exist right outside the New York tax area boundaries. It exists up in, Bridger Canyon, exists in Clarkston. And so there's absolutely, they exist. What exists here exists in a lot of places throughout the county. So I would soft route that we need to keep in mind that I'm trying to address Big Sky's needs and the rest of our community's needs in Gallatin County by developing those people that have areas of specialty to support the entire service area. But yeah, there's some places like Big Sky that have people like Dustin that are engaged in projects, field projects, and there's other fire departments throughout our counties that don't have that and would need more support that this position could provide. Whereas in Big Sky it might be more of a administrative support and maybe the fire department or the ground stuff. So I don't know that it's a one-size-fits-all solution throughout our communities.
Real quick, can I interrupt you all? The air conditioning is quite loud towards the back of the room, so if you could, geez Louise, speak up a little bit. There she goes. She's upset. Sorry.
I just would like to make a point that.
Am I all set? Okay, thank you.
In terms of the scale of what's been built up here, if you use taxable valuation as a proxy for that, what's been built in Big Sky on both sides of the county line is considerably larger than this. And the last time I looked, that number was vying for second or third in the state in terms of the scale of what's been built. So, what's at risk up here is a very considerable chunk of infrastructure. And we have got to quit thinking of Big Sky as kind of a rural small community. It is not. I mean, it is a significant chunk of infrastructure at a scale that, again, second or third in the state. And I'd be happy to go through those numbers with anybody if you'd like to see what that adds up to, but that's a fact.
I was going to ask someone, either of you, about what the experience on the community side is coordinating with two departments. When you're just thinking about emergency, we've been through emergency declaration in the last year, and then planning efforts for mitigation and response plan, for example. What does that look like? What's the status? What's it look like?
Commissioner Brown, that's a great question. And, we rely very heavily on our fire department for these things. I know they work closely with Patrick. I would probably rely on our fire department about what it's been like to work with two directors of emergency services from the two county. I can tell you just the fact that our emergency services plan hasn't been updated for 20 years tells me a little bit that we're forgotten because they have big counties that these guys are responsible for. And so that would be my only opinion, is saying that, just looking at our emergency service plan, that it's long overdue. And to me, that's an indication that it's easy to say Madison County's worried about that or Gallatin County's worried about that. And I don't know if I'm making some assumptions. So we got to be careful when I try to hear this achieved to calls.
So that fire management plan is not a county plan, it's a federal plan that's developed federal money for wildfire outside of the county many years ago. This fire is not something we maintain, whether we even had a part in developing back in the day when it was developed. So
I would just add the comment that if you aren't aware of it already, you will soon. Coordinating anything in Big Sky involves more moving parts than it ought to. There's no one authority here for anything. So coordinating stuff like this is a non-trivial effort, always.
I think something else to think about that we should be more thoughtful in thinking about actually is there are areas within our community that aren't a part of Big Sky's fire district. I've worked really closely with Dustin at the fire department in our fire department at the Ocean Club, for example, because we're not in their fire department. But we work very closely with them to make sure that we're doing similar things and that what we do that may impact them is, involved in terms of just forest clearing and those types of things and finding ways that we can all connect. But there are other areas besides the Ocean Club that aren't in their district that are kind of out there. And so just remembering that there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen, not just the two counties.
Commissioner Brown, I would, both Patrick and Joe have been very responsive anytime we have an ask. And so I've been pleased with working with both. I do think Patrick is going down the right road here, though, is having some consolidated and coordinated focus effort on Big Sky. What does concern me a little bit, Patrick, about what you're saying is funding this position. And I'm sure there will be a resort tax ask, but spreading that position too thin across Gallatin County. And so we'd like to see maybe there's a county-wide position, but maybe we could help fund somebody with the fire department that reports to that position that can focus on Big Sky. We're large enough, as Steve was talking about, that there should be a focus effort on Big Sky, especially with wildland fuels mitigation and evacuation plans.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just looking at what I think I can achieve and sell.
Yeah.
Start to build.
There's a few points to speak on from the fire department's perspective on this, and I apologize on.
Come up here so I can
I
see.
couldn't hear with the air conditioning system running back here. As far as the plans go, so the Big Sky Fire Management Strategy is an old plan. That's a community-specific plan. There are community wildfire protection plans in place that Gallatin County adopted in 2020, 2021, and then there's also one in Madison County that was. Those are county-specific plans. When you get into the specificities of what we have up here, it doesn't come very in depth. It's kind of pretty broad. I know from the fire department's perspective, we're in support of this. We, the outcry for fuels mitigation work and wildfire risk reduction up here, it's huge. And my job is dealing with a lot of that, and also dealing with all the development that's going on. So everybody sees all this development going on, but at the same time, we're getting 15 calls a day from community members saying, hey, can you come look at my property? I'd like to do some fuels mitigation work. And we're trying to fuel all this stuff. And we put in for I don't know how many grants in the last 3 years. We're writing a community-specific wildfire mitigation grant. It's not very appealing to the people putting the money out there because it's so specific. Whereas if we've got counties writing those grants for us, and it's a larger area, it's way more appealing to those grant programs. And so that would be super beneficial. If it just happened, another person that we can lean upon to say, hey, is there any other funding out there that I'm missing? Or do you guys have anything available? I've got this, this person wants to do a project, run funds, or vice versa. And so we're hiring next month a community risk reduction coordinator. That's going to work for us as well. Again, but it's going to be a high-risk position that's going to be doing fuels mitigation work, but it's also going to be dealing with our moving, land use permits, construction safety reviews, sprinkler reviews, and all other things too. So again, it's just somebody that takes some of that off my plate. So hopefully I can open up to be able to do, be a little more of a community command on that, work on some of those bigger overhanging projects that have been on our plate for a while. But just to kind of sum it all up, we're in support of this. For emergency management, anything that goes on a local incident, and we're requesting mutual aid resources from county, federal, state. Emergency management obviously got a big play in facilitation of those resources. We work really well together with both emergency management. Being former emergency manager in Madison County and having these conversations with Patrick 5 years ago, it is needed that there's a continuity of here, consistency for the emergency management.
So Madison, with that thought in mind, I'm communicating already about the challenges of getting everybody together, so to speak. I'm hopeful that we can not duplicate efforts because on occasion that happens up here anyway. So you guys might need to be in that conversation also. I was referring to earlier.
Further discussion? I think we're expecting just some direction, right? But I'm sensing some pretty clear energy in the right direction. Is housing, but maybe, I don't think that you, it's not too big. I think everybody's thinking even bigger than what you proposed as far as just one position, but like a more comprehensive partnership plan about who's involved in it, what services are they providing to who, and how much time.
Would an appropriate next step to be get a Zoom call scheduled, maybe the two chairmen from the counties, somebody from the drug task force, somebody from the fire department, and ask this in a little bit smaller group, see what we think it might be.
We could, unless the full commission would like to hear it all together, might be more productive. Instead of having to report back.
I'd be happy, Ron, I'd be happy to meet.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think doing that sooner rather than later, to Jim's point, since we're already pretty deep into our budgeting process.
So the next couple of weeks, notice something, joint virtual meeting. All 6 or just 2? What do you guys think?
I think we should open it up to. Yeah. I agree with virtual, maybe we should just meet together.
So why don't we try to meet in Gallatin County? Yeah, big old room. We could probably inviting myself to your house.
Yeah.
We like our meeting.
With a virtual option.
I think it'd be helpful too, that I know you're trying to sell something on a scale that we went by, but I think it'd be handy or helpful to us to see what your long range plans are, positions, and you know, like the next 5-10 years. So commissions can start thinking ahead of what it's going to cost.
I actually have a document they'll get on Monday at our quarterly update.
I'm not surprised.
Careful what you ask for.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for me?
Anything to wrap up from anybody? Is there any further public comment on that item? Certainly available to anybody in participation if they'd like to comment, give us thoughts on that.
Okay. Meeting invitation coming shortly.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have budget meetings pretty much regularly for the next couple of weeks, so.
It's you, Jim.
All right.
Commissioner Jim Hart.
Are you all right if I just stay seated or should I stand? You guys are good? Okay. First, thanks once again for having this. We're trying to have it twice a year, which I think is terrific. And then secondly, it's not an apology that's needed, but at least a reference to our third commissioner. He and his family have some ongoing personal kinds of things that come up almost without notice. So that's why he's not here today. He sent his apologies. So now, my topic is the Jack Creek Road. We met last Tuesday with Great West Engineering, and he gave us an update not only on Jack Creek, but another project that Great West is helping us with. So the design of that 3-mile stretch of the county road is there in place. It's about that thick with maps and all those things that you all might imagine. We're about, I think you broke it, if I recall anyway, you broke it up into about 8 different sections. There probably will not be any blasting, but one never knows. There are a couple of those spots that have rock outcrops and this and that and the other. We encouraged not to get into the hillsides too much. For those of you who've traveled that 3-mile stretch in the canyon, there are springs everywhere. I'm afraid that if they get into the hillside too much, another one will crop up somewhere else. So Jeremiah from Great West is totally aware of that. Our plan is to stay within the easement. So we have 60 feet up through there. We'll advertise for construction company soon. Jeremiah, I think, Ron, did he say within the end of May, if I remember right? We'll have public meetings. There will be some people within the canyon that trust me, will be totally concerned with whatever it is that we do. Similar to what it is, similar to the concerns that folks in Big Sky have. How much are you going to do to what kinds of effects are you going to have on the creek, most specifically? And I'm confident that through our public meetings, pretty confident that everybody will be pleased with our plan to move away from the creek as much as we can to keep that TMDL down as low as possible. That is one of the major concerns that I've heard from folks like DEQ and so forth. So that emergency, if you want to call it emergency ingress egress, is on its way as early as this fall. Dustin brought up a very good point when the earlier presentation in eggs and issues had to do with what's going to go on up here in the fall on Highway 64. So having possible closures down in this neck of the woods and then possible closures in Jack Creek, it'll pose a possible problem. So we'll coordinate well. The plan right now, as far as any kinds of closures, would be only through a given time frame in a given day. So like, just as an example, not set in stone yet, from 9 till 4, you can expect an hour's delay, as an example, rather than closing it completely and creating a detour all the way around to Four Corners or to West Yellowstone in order to get to the Madison side. So that's our current strategy. That's why I think we need to have public meetings to have that whole possibility discussed. The cost is approximately $1 million. The estimate by the engineers at the time this was started was a little less than that. However, it was brought up earlier today already that construction costs are continuing to go up. It scares the heck out of me. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what the bidders come up with. What else, Ron? Did I cover it?
I think you covered it.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Just noting that those anticipated closures, both on that side and this side, are going to occur during fire season.
Right. That's why I mentioned to Dustin that we need to stay in cooperation. So not going to have any fires this year. Anything else, folks?
So Jim, what's that going to do since the rest of the road is private anyway? How's that going to help?
I would say from Madison County's perspective, the help is that 3-mile stretch will be a safer route. I think Moonlight's route is reasonably safe, wouldn't you say, Kevin?
Absolutely. And so I just wanted to, I was raising my hand over here. The two goals of the project, the first and foremost goal is emergency access for the community of Big Sky. And Moonlight's gone on record that said if there is an emergency, those gates will be open. And if they're not, drive through. You need to get out. And so that was the #1 issue. And the Madison County commissioners have been hearing pretty loudly the last few years that 3-mile stretch is a bottleneck. You can't get emergency vehicles in and public out if 64 were ever going to be blocked. So Commissioner Skinner, yes, the Moonlight Road is private, but it won't be if there's an emergency. And so it's fixing that bottleneck. The second goal of this project is to improve the water quality in Jack Creek. If you ever drive that stretch during a rain event, water's mud's going directly into the road. So very optimistic with Great West Engineering's design, we'll be able to improve the water quality in Jack Creek, which is, it's nice to have some. And to answer your specific question, Commissioner Hart, the Moonlight portion of the road is up to the county standards, 24-foot width. There is one area, Beaver Slide, that exceeds the grade, but the rest of the road is up to county standards. So it would be getting, I think this project, Commissioner Hart, correct me if I'm wrong, or Commissioner Nye, this project that we're talking about, or Commissioner Hart is talking about, gets about 80% of that 3 miles up to that 24-foot width. So there's still 20% that will not be done because of the expense at this phase.
And I might say with that thought in mind, there are 2 bridges yet to be improved. One of them is already on the Treasure State Endowment Program to be done in 23.
Yeah, if it's approved.
But yes, yeah.
Which is still in session.
You can tell me this after. Yeah. So then we still have one of those bridges yet to be improved. So we'll keep asking if the program still exists. We'll keep asking the legislature to continue with the TSEP program. It might be called something different, I understand, rather than Treasure State Endowment, because the funding for most of those bridge projects or whatever else TSEP covers actually comes from the coal trust. So some of that kind of coal trust money might be going away. And there are a number of people who believe that by changing the name, folks would be more aware of the fact that that's where the money actually comes from. So just FYI.
There's a question in the chat if you guys.
Sure,
look
please.
Has there been any thought in regards to signage for fire escape? We can't assume our tourists know where to go in case of a fire. States of Washington and Oregon have tsunami escape signs to show visitors where to run.
Wow, that's a really good question. We know that. Anyway, do we have any plans for fire emergency egress signage for direction?
Yeah, Richard, we talked with developers when they do new subdivisions and things like that, potentially doing that. It's really more of a, as you drive around it, up on the mountain in different places, it's more getting people off to those main arteries. That's really the issue. I can count how many times, I go to the resort and someone's up in there, and in moonlight, kind of get backwards. Yeah, those areas is more of a concern. We brought it up a little bit, we're able to push on that arm. We do think it's a good idea, but we're always fighting that, aesthetics and fields and things like that. So that's kind of where it's been.
There's another component to it. Doesn't explain that portion. Probably getting main arterials, but a lot of times it depends on the situation on where sheriff's office and the fire department want people to go. I know that sometimes people really want to feel. I know that anything happens, I go to this location and that's my evacuation route, that's my relocation site. But the reality of it is, depending on where the incident is and what direction you want them to go. And I think Dustin's point of getting into the main arterials, but trying to say you always go here is challenging for emergency officials. And the sheriff is here, he could elaborate on that, but I believe that's his stance.
Kind of another thing I'm going to push on too is identification of safety zones. Because a lot of times, when these evacuation routes, they might be impossible, so we have to think about some contingency plans. And so safety zones is one of those discussions too. So, say there's a safety zone, maybe the resort pre-secured lot, a huge concrete gravel area. We want to get people to, well, it's counterintuitive than to have signage that's pushing people out. Maybe arterials, we can't use. So there's a lot of other thoughts and discussions that have gone on there with us.
But just to emphasize that point in the moonlight area, even if you know your way around up there, if you're trying to get out Jack Creek, people who have been there many times could easily get lost up there, let alone people who aren't very familiar with the area.
I might comment also about something that was brought up as far as emergency people coming up Jack Creek while Big Sky folks are attempting to go that way. There likely will not be very many emergency people coming up from Ennis. They'll be likely going around. The predominant force, so to speak, Dustin and the rest of the Big Sky folks will be up here, coming from West Yellowstone, coming from Bozeman. Won't be that many coming from Ennis. So that congestion probably will not be there. And my thought is make it a one-way. People go from here all the way down to the Madison Valley quickly as you can, safely. So I guess to summarize the answer to that question, what I heard was it isn't exactly like tsunami notification. Tsunamis come from one place, they're very predictable, they climb terrain from one direction, we can model them. Fire signage,
evacuation routes are not as clear, probably not as good for permanent signage. We be able to be flexible. And the sheriff, our sheriff.
Danbury, General Contractor. The one thing I would talk about that would be helpful is reader board signs, having the ability to get those out right away. And those are stored someplace. I know we have them in the valley. Sorry. Having more of that would be effective because then we can place with the messages that we actually want on them and get them out of the meeting. So that would be something I'd be.
So solution to that would be reader boards that we can customize. That's a good point.
That's all I have unless there are more questions.
Any public comment on the Jack Road subject? Okay. We'll move on. Next item is Kevin Germain and Danny Birchwell for you have a whole set of bullet points here. So just let you get started.
Thank you, Commissioner McFarlane. I'm going to invite Mr. Danny Birchwell up. Our first agenda item is just to update the commissioners on the Big Sky relief efforts that have been going on here for just over a year now, and we're sure looking forward to getting this in our rear view mirror. But before Danny gives the update, just a huge shout out to both county health departments. You know, both Matt Kelly and Melissa Brummel. I know Melissa's no longer in her position and Matt are soon not to be, but they have been an absolute pleasure to work with during some very difficult times and very supportive. So I just want to really thank you guys for your leadership and thank your health departments, because everybody knows this last year has been very trying, and having that leadership at the health department's been very helpful for our efforts here at Big Sky. We have done a lot over the last year, and I'll let Danny give the update. Everybody, Danny Birchwell, our Executive Director, Resort Tax.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, commissioners, for making your time up here in Big Sky and allowing our Resort Area District Board to join you in these discussions. I think one of the things, how many of you are familiar with Big Sky relief efforts that have been going on here at Big Sky? I'm going to pass out our annual report from 2020. It does not include our testing program. Show of hands, anyone heard of Big Sky Relief? A couple of you. Well, we're really proud of the partnership that was forged here in our unincorporated community. And, you know, we're a little over a year after the pandemic hit. I think all of us were in a position of uncertainty. And our community really bonded together through partnership to stay nimble, adaptable, to respond to the efforts of what we learned through COVID-19. Our recovery plan and our resiliency plan were all made possible by a couple of key partnerships. As Kevin mentioned, the collaboration between the health departments, this cross-county collaboration was extremely important as we moved forward with trying to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 here in our community. Both health departments, Matt Kelly and Melissa Brummel, were amazing to work with, and worked hand in hand with them and DPHHS at the state level. Partnerships with Bozeman Health and Big Sky Medical Center were extremely critical. Our local healthcare provider with Big Sky Medical Center was paramount to being able to support our community and the impacts of COVID-19 in our community. And the public-private partnership of the Big Sky relief efforts was unparalleled as far as I'm concerned throughout the state of Montana, if not throughout our country. We're extremely proud of the partnerships that we developed with our large employers. All the Cross Harbor entities from Yellowstone Club to Long Mountain Land Company to Spanish Peaks and Moonlight Basin were critical in helping to be able to execute our efforts here. Chamber of Commerce, Visit Big Sky were both operationally partners with Big Sky Relief, but also funding partners with Big Sky Relief as well. Our small employers and our community at large was extremely critical in being able to keep our community safe, healthy, and our economy open. You might be asking why we have a resort tax district sitting here at the table and engaged in the discussion related to mitigating the impacts of COVID relief. And the answer is 80%, 70% of our total tax collections come during our winter season. It was extremely critical that we were able to keep our community safe, healthy, and open for business. I failed to mention that our Big Sky Resort partners were also extremely critical as one of the large employers as well. So just wanted to kind of recap the last year and bring you through our journey here. I think all of us found us working in job responsibilities as defined in our job descriptions, and I myself and our district certainly found ourselves operating within that capacity. But let's jump back to January 31st. The World Health Organization announced a global health emergency. February 3rd, the U.S. declared a public health emergency. On March 10th, the Big Sky Resort Area District unanimously voted a resolution to commit $1 million for public funds to support pandemic needs. We formed a subcommittee to work with our community and address the needs of the community. This is all 3 days before, on March 13th, a first case of COVID-19 was identified in Montana. On March 15th, Big Sky Resort shut down as a result of the pandemic to keep our community safe and healthy. On March 16th, the Gallatin City County Health Department launched its first health order with regulations to move forward with keeping Gallatin County healthy and safe. All of this with our Big Sky Resort Area District Board and District acting well in advance of what we knew was going to be a pandemic coming to Montana and going to hit our community. On March 20th, efforts of Big Sky Relief Partners, which are outlined in that annual report, were opened and announced. 2 core groups were established and met by monthly in order to address the needs of the community. We have operating partners and funding partners. So we're meeting every other week to really identify what needs existed within the community and then report those needs back out for our community. A website was launched, bigskyrelief.org, to establish communication efforts with our community, and on a bi-weekly basis, we were actually sending out our reports to the community through e-communications and engaging with our local media partners. Matching funds of the $1 million that was committed from the Big Sky Resort Area District were brought to the table by partners with all 3 community foundations, the Yellowstone Club Community Foundations, the Spanish Peaks Community Foundation, and the Yellowstone Club. Moonlight. There you go. Grants were opened at that time on March 20th to support nonprofit organizations, local businesses, individuals, and families, and help support the resources that were lost as a result of the pandemic. Now we fast forward to March 27th when the federal government reacted and the CARES Act was passed, and $2.2 trillion were committed to states and through the federal funds to support this effort. March 28th, the shelter-in-place order was issued by the state of Montana. On April 10th, the Madison County Health Department implemented lodging restrictions, which really put a closure to much of the business here, much needed closure to much of the business here in the community. Fast forward to July 1st, and through this process, our organization has been working closely to identify what opportunities would exist to mitigate the impacts. Kind of 2 core areas were identified. Masks were extremely important and a key component of keeping our community safe and healthy, and testing was becoming a more evident opportunity for being able to mitigate the impacts and keeping the spread of COVID-19 mitigated. On July 1st, Big Sky Medical Center hosted their first free COVID testing event here in Big Sky. It was offered to any of the community members that wanted to get a test here in Big Sky. What was identified through that process was deficiencies and challenges in the overtaxing of the testing system here in Montana. On July 6th, Big Sky Resort Area District and Big Sky Relief Partners wrote a letter to the congressional delegation for increasing overall capacity in the state of Montana. It was extremely important for us as we work towards keeping our community safe, that we work with our county and our state partners to identify where the deficiencies were and try to make the pie bigger for everyone and not overtax the resources here in Gallatin County and Madison County. In the summer of 2020, large Big Sky employers launched a private program for surveillance testing, which were able to identify several outbreaks on large construction projects here within the community. That program is what continued to demonstrate to the community that surveillance testing was able to pull out asymptomatic individuals, which CDC studies wound up finding that over 50% of the spread was happening through asymptomatic individuals throughout the nation. And we continue to focus as a district towards, and Big Sky Relief Partners, towards implementing a large-scale surveillance testing program for our community. On October 28th, the Resort Area District committed $750,000 towards the testing program in partnership with the Visit Big Sky partner, who committed $250,000 of CARES Act dollars. And a total program of $4.5 million was launched within the community of Big Sky to support surveillance testing, identify asymptomatic individuals, pull them out of the population, and quarantine and isolate those individuals through a contact tracing program that we developed in partnership with Bozeman Health and our Big Sky Medical Center partners. On December 3rd, a mobile lab, one of its, or first of its kind, and the only one that I'm aware of in the nation, brought 2 Panther Hole Logic machines here to Big Sky that was parked over on the Big Sky Water and Sewer District property. Major thanks to them for allowing that opportunity to be able to process our samples of COVID-19 tests within a 24-hour period here in the community. On December 7th, Big Sky Relief launched a free surveillance testing program, the only that I'm aware of in the nation, at a total of $4.5 million that was funded 25% through public funds, 25% through the philanthropic support of the community foundations, and 50% through the private employers of Big Sky. On December 23rd, Big Sky Medical Center received the first doses of the vaccine, and we began to see a light at the end of the tunnel of being able to see a conclusion, or beginning to see a conclusion of the pandemic here in Big Sky. In January 21st, we began to collaborate across counties with both health departments as well as both medical facilities with Madison Valley Medical Center and Bozeman Health to bring vaccines to our community here in Big Sky. Fast forward to today, April 29th. Vaccinations are going very well, with huge thanks to Bozeman Health and Madison Valley Medical Center. Almost everyone who wants a vaccination shot has received their first shot now at this point. Fast forward to April 29th. What did our testing program do? Over 55,000 COVID-19 tests were processed in the community of Big Sky. Resources were brought into Big Sky that did not contribute to overall taxing of the Gallatin County COVID-19 testing program or the contact tracing program. We're proud to say that we were able to pull out over 1,100 asymptomatic individuals from the community to isolate and quarantine who were tested positive for COVID-19. The lab moved out of Big Sky, but we'll continue to operate our testing program through a mail-in program through the rest of the school season. And an anecdotal benefit of our testing program was we were able to bring our school back to 100% in-person learning. Looking at the grants during a critical time of uncertainty in our community, we're able to construct and build out 4 additional hospital rooms for the Big Sky Medical Center, purchased 5 ventilators overall for the Bozeman Health System, which supported Gallatin County at large, provided additional PPE for our medical professionals in the Big Sky. We were able to grant over 191 individuals and families over $200,000 through a time of uncertainty and a challenging time through the COVID-19 pandemic. We granted over $330,000 to local nonprofits for short and long-term impacts of the pandemic, and over $450,000 in partnership with DBS and the Chamber of Commerce were supported to our local businesses in a time of need. Over 70 hours of no-cost behavioral health counseling was provided, and over 150,000 masks were provided throughout the community for free through the entire season. We still have quite a few of those masks. And I, quite frankly, have seen more compliance here within the community of Big Sky in terms of mask wearing than I have throughout the entire state of Montana. We could not have made any of this possible without the support and partnership of both county health departments, without the support and partnership of all of our local partners, but in whole, without the active participation of the Big Sky community. Why does this matter? It matters because cross-county collaboration is extremely important. It's important for us to have discussions like we had with emergency services. It's important for us to continue discussions as we move forward into the next agenda item that Kevin is going to be addressing. Why does it matter for a tax district? Well, it all comes down to the finances, guys. And we want to work together to continue to find opportunities for long-term planning for the Big Sky community. We believe that it not only benefits the Big Sky community at large, but Gallatin County and Madison County for us to be able to plan and collaborate together. I have no ask for you related to our Big Sky relief efforts, but wanted to make you aware of the enormous amount of energy and effort that was put forth by our local community and by your health departments, and want to say thank you for your support as we move forward through this uncertain time. And let's get around the corner and hopefully move out of this pandemic and begin to talk about other things that we can work together. I'll turn it back over to Kevin.
I have nothing to add. You did a good job on the overview. Is there any questions for Danny? Continue on. Great, thank you.
I'll stay up here in case you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Mr. Chair, the next agenda item on the jointly funded efforts, I really appreciate Patrick for teeing up this whole topic. worked on putting a list together of the efforts that I'm aware of that both counties in the resort area district, all three of us helped fund. And I'm hoping that there's a more efficient way and collaborative way to go about these jointly funded efforts. As it exists today, and I'll pick on the transportation district because they're a great community service to us. They come to resort to access for money, then they go to Gallatin County, then they go to Madison County with that in hand. And I personally feel that that's a very inefficient system and that we should have some more collaboration on these efforts. I think the best example of a jointly funded effort is the sheriff's department. We have a multi-year agreement and a three-way agreement on how to fund it. And so I'm throwing out the idea of forming a subcommittee with one representative, one commissioner from each county, and one representative from the resort area district to perhaps meet quarterly to talk about these jointly funded efforts. And that could probably drop to biannually once we get it in a rhythm. But I just think everything that's listed here, the one I forgot about is noxious weeds. That's another one that we work on together and we all fund. And I'm sure there's one or two that I haven't remembered. But it would they're all critical needs for our community. And so to be able to help them out, to maybe have a more concerted or consolidated, coordinated funding effort to where if we have a subcommittee, those subcommittees then can go report back to the governing bodies and say, this is what we recommend we fund so that these guys aren't left hanging. We can move these pretty critical efforts forward. So I have a list of projects here. I don't have any specific asks on anything on this list, but just if we had a subcommittee that met regularly, that we can do a better job and help them out, would help the big sky.
So a question from a new guy, not being aware of the details of the multi-year agreement, the sheriff's department, is search and rescue included in that agreement, or is it dealt with separately from the agreement that you have in place?
It's dealt with separately. So the search and rescue I know is largely funded by Gallatin County. I'm not sure if there's a Madison County contribution. There's a lot of coordination, but then they come to us separately and ask us for money for facilities and other things. It just seems like the only one that I'm aware of that has the multi-year agreement is the sheriff. To answer your question specifically, Commissioner Brown. 911 system is a big one. It ties us all together. And the last funding efforts that I can recall is, they came to us, asked for some grants, came to Madison County, asked for some money. Anyway.
Fire business review as well.
Fire, oh, well, yes, but that's just funded by us. I'm just thinking, yeah.
Discussions or questions for Kevin on that subject? Right. Sounds very logical. I understand that a lot of these jointly funded projects kind of require some kind of negotiation as a group about proportionate share where we feel that fits. And when we're all having individual meetings about our budgets in different places, it's hard to make a decision without knowing what everybody else is buying is and having some of that kind of pre-negotiated package before we discuss it. See a benefit to that. Just it would be, I envision, like you said, it would become a kind of an advisory report back about what had been proportioned, what had been discussed, negotiated.
We can work on it. And we won't have to come to Virginia City every year. We do like to see your shiny face, Phil, and I mean your face. So
I don't mind making the drive.
Well, it's nice to hear how things are progressing. So
Just to expand on that, Commissioner Harper. I'm sorry, Mr. Pack would still have to make the drive to Virginia City. It would be, at least we would all have a better understanding of where the other entities stand. With one representative, you can't make a decision, you can't commit your board to funding, but I do think there would be a more open dialogue, and I think that person, as Commissioner McFarland pointed out, could report back to the other commissioners, hey, this is what the feeling and maybe be a stronger advocate than they have been in the past, because they would have been a part of these discussions and understood where the other counties stood, as well as resort tax. But just having come to us in isolation and ask for funding. just don't think it's good.
More to come. Okay, is there any public comment on that item?
I suppose that's discussed. So David Cack with the Big Sky Transportation District, and I like this idea because, as Kevin said, it helps us get a sense. I mean, as we prepare our budget to say, okay, I know what I think I'm going to ask for. I don't know what I might get. And again, the cycles are slightly different when that timing occurs. And so if there could be a little more certainty to say, yeah, we think there's some agreement there. Certainly if we could get to a point of multi-year agreements, it just really helps, because with us, we have our plan of what we want to do. And as was discussed, as much of the resort tax money comes in the winter, most of our service occurs in the winter. So we go through this budget cycle and we say, okay, this is what we think we're going to do. And then we get through the budget cycle and go, how much money did we get and what can we afford to do? And then if we have to make those adjustments, we do it. So it helps us with our planning if we can go, hey, there's some certainty in this funding from year to year. Of course, our federal funding is tied to the Federal Surface Transportation Bill, which currently expires in September, but we'll see where that goes. But certainly we need that local funding as well. So to have some certainty between resort tax and the two counties will certainly help. So any efforts that would help bring some certainty to that, as was discussed, that those decisions can't be made by the subcommittee, but hopefully through that discussion, there's some general agreement that, hey, we'll put in this if you guys can support this, and, have that discussion, what is reasonable would certainly help. Thank you.
I'd just like to build on that. It also allows for us to be able to conceptually understand and forecast what additional needs might be coming down the operational pipeline for some of these organizations. I thought I heard Patrick mention there might be a possible ask of us at some point related to some office space for this emergency management position. We don't want to know about that the year up when that's going to actually happen. It actually would be beneficial for us from a cash flow perspective, as I'm sure you would be in agreement with, to understand what those needs are going to be 2-3 years out, so that we're able to plan for large capital projects like an office if that is to come up. So it's kind of there's a chicken and an egg situation, but it's very helpful to know what the needs are well in advance of the ask. And it feels like right now we just get the ask dropped on us during the budgeting cycle and then move on to the next year. So just wanted to add to what predictability component David was talking about.
Follow-up from anybody on the board about that subject? It's a good idea, sounds like. Okay, so move on.
Yes, thank you. Caitlin, can you pull up the agenda? I don't know if you're still working with the.
I'm so thirsty.
That's all right. I think I missed this when Lori circulated the agenda, but the BSEO's grant application should not be listed under the ARPA projects. Sorry, that should be a separate agenda item. The American Relief Plan Act, project support. So the community of Big Sky is, and I know the commissioners are well aware of this, but sewer and water is one of our biggest community critical needs, as well as one of the most important topics is how do we safely and environmentally safely build out our community and ensure that we protect our watershed. As important as protecting our environment is to make sure that we can provide for housing for our workers and those that are in need. And so I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Ron Edwards to give a brief overview of 4 projects that the Water and Sewer District had identified that are critical needs for this community. We are trying to work with the Montana legislature to get some of the ARPA funds, and the ask of both county commissions is a letter of support for these projects.
No funding, just a letter of support.
Kevin Warney, I might be up there. Thank you, commissioners, for taking the time to come to Big Sky. Thank you for your service. I'm sure your lives are like ours, dealing with all the growth we're seeing in Big Sky. So appreciate your efforts. Both counties. Keep up on that. I'm Ron Edwards, manager of the Water and Sewer District. We've got a lot going on, obviously. We've been working on a wastewater treatment plant for the past 3 years. That project went out to bid back in January. We opened bids, so we just awarded the contractors. Hopefully we'll be starting in May of this year. We partnered with the resort tax board. We got a 1% resort tax approved, which will significantly fund this project. It's a $42.7 million plan. That plan would be unaffordable. Resort tax committing 60% of the $27 million towards the project. So we thank them. ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, is creating a lot of buzz up in the legislature. There's a House Bill 632 that's in session that we don't know what the outcome of that will look like. But the important thing is that we're in the ask for that. So we've partnered with the Resort Tax Board. We've got a couple lobbyists working up there. I got updates today from Kevin and Dan, so I think things are moving along pretty quickly on that. We think it'll end up in DNRC for the application process, but we don't know yet. So I don't think there's anybody more shovel ready than Big Sky is for these projects. And so Kevin and the lobbyists had asked that I put together kind of the big projects that we're working towards. So I put together a summary of these 4 projects that are up there. Caitlin, if you could scroll down. So the first one is our phase 1. This is the project that we're currently setting about to build. It will effectively double our plant size from 650,000 to 1.3 million gallons a day. It also has a lot of high-level treatment, so the water quality we'll be able to produce will be significantly better. Right now, all our water gets reused for golf course irrigation. We're looking to expand that to snowmaking, so all of these will be important steps toward that. If you could go down, let's see, keep going down. So that's a rendering of the new plant. Our contractor will be RSCI out of Boise, Idaho. For that, it's a 30-month build, so it'll take a significant amount of time to construct. You can scroll down some more. Phase 2 of this is basically expanding on the plant that we're going to construct. So we can add more tankage to the plant. It's not currently bid. The way we're growing, I think we're going to need to do that sooner rather than later. So we would like to find money to immediately work towards expanding our tankage. So that, and it's a tough build with the site we've got. So to be able to do that now, it's kind of critical. So keep going. So that's a rendering that shows basically an expansion to the north onto the new plant, which will set us up to be in line for like 3 million gallons a day, eventually for Big Sky. Scroll down. There's an advanced treatment component, which adds a bunch of equipment to further treat our water to deal with CECs, which are contaminants of emerging concern. All of these things get us to the place we need to be to reuse water effectively around the community. Scroll down. So that's where we would basically retrofit our filter building, gut it, put in all this $5 equipment. Scroll down.
Do you run, what's a CEC? Can you give an example of what a CEC is?
Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So that's a big topic in the wastewater industry in general. There's no There's no permit standards for that. It's an issue though that we know is coming. So these types of improvements will help set us up to succeed with that when it does become a permitted activity. Scroll down. And this is new territory for Big Sky. So we've got another county water and sewer district that's been created in the canyon. The Gallatin County Commissioners approved that on December 29th, I think was the date of 2020. So they're just getting started, but there's a real opportunity here in Big Sky to take the canyon, which is served by septics and private wells, some level 2 systems down there. Work collaboratively with them to run sewer collectors in the canyon with a lift station at the entrance corner. And we'd be looking at constructing 2 pipelines. One would be a force main to pump water up to our new plant. The other pipeline would be a gravity line down to the corner. To make that work, we need to expand our disposal horizon to include groundwater disposal. So we contracted with engineers to start doing evaluations for potential groundwater discharge permits in the canyon area of Big Sky. So we would basically be expanding disposal to accommodate taking on raw wastewater from the canyon areas, get all that stuff off septics, which will improve the situation. We're early on in the process. We don't know what that engineering looks like yet, but we're currently working towards that. We're optimistically hopeful that conclusions are good so that we can proceed with that. What I didn't list in the summary of expenses was just the canyon infrastructure. So what I listed was the 2 pipelines and lift station, and there's need in the canyon for collectors. So there's potentially ARPA money that can go towards that as well. The timelines for all this, I don't know, Kevin, you've been talking to legislators and their lobbyists. Do you have any sense of the timelines when the ARPA funding might be available for these kinds of things?
I don't have great clarity, Ron. I know there's a subcommittee that's going to be formed between both houses, or the House and the Senate, as well as some governor appointees that will prioritize these projects. And that's where we're hoping to get these projects in front of that subcommittee with letters of support. And I thought ultimately they are looking at, I assume they'll make some decisions early on, but October is the deadline to have everything figured out. And so, you know, our timing on this is now. We're working with both Representative Gillette and Senator Flowers on the Gallatin County side. We're also working with Representative Walsh and Senator Melbourne on the Madison County side. They got this handout this morning. And so we're asking, they've been very supportive in helping them push on this. But the sooner we get the letters of support, the better in front of our legislature.
So are you all, you're going to be able to apply yourselves?
The water and sewer district.
Yeah. Without going through a local government, they'll be able to go directly to that funding committee and ask for direct allocation.
Commissioner Brown, I believe that House Bill, what's 632? 632. They amended it to allow water and sewer districts, so they're working on it to make them allowable applicants. So the applicant, we're hoping, will be the water and sewer district.
And that was an important piece of that, because initially just municipalities qualify, and we're still unincorporated in Big Sky. So they needed to expand that to include county water and sewer districts under 713. We've also been talking to the DNRC, outreaching to them to get on their list for priority funding. So we've begun those discussions with them. I think House Bill 11, the Treasure State Endowment Program, those are capped at $600,000 or $750,000. I think that ARPA money may be used to expand some of that. So if you have any TSAP projects, there's potential for those to get funded to a greater level.
At least the bridge portion of it is 750, right? I was thinking maybe the others might be a little higher. That could be low.
Yeah, I think they were all 750. You might be right, but I think that could get better for them with our consideration. Steve?
Could you comment at least briefly on the impact that the lack of support from the state revolving fund has had on this collection of projects?
How much time do we have?
I think it needs to be heard.
Well, and this is in the legislature as well. And I think it's an important overall big picture of what's going on with infrastructure, not only here, but across the country. So what Steve's talking about, I've been here 25 years, we've done almost $30 million of projects, always using SRF, which is the state revolving fund loan program, low interest rate loans that work with communities to fund infrastructure projects. We were lined up to do that with this wastewater. And we were told, as we were getting closer to actually bidding the project, that SRF was out of money. They didn't have enough funding to go get the loans necessary to fund our project. So that caused us to pivot and have to go look at private lending. And we worked for months with the First Security Bank folks and D.A. Davidson to go find private money for our sewer plant. So we're getting 3.07 interest for 20 years on a 30-year loan, which is pretty good for private funding. But the takeaway from all that is the state lost track of the cost of this infrastructure and the demand for it to the point they couldn't fund it. So I think they're in the legislature getting more backing for more funding for SRF. And they're looking at the cost of these. So Belgrade's building a new plant. It's 45 million, somewhere in there. After financing, it's over 50 million. Whitefish is building a new plant. Billings has been working on one. The cost of these things are just unprecedented. And what we're seeing, early on, we were thinking we were doing a $30 million plant. Did at 42.7. So it's been interesting. And if you all have questions past this meeting, I'd be happy to spend some time, for the new commissioners or anybody else that would like to know more about what we're doing.
So just a comment, we met with our planning department yesterday, and especially in the light of the water and sewer district being able to independently approach the legislature for this ARPA funding, we would, on behalf of our planning department, just request that you communicate closely with them about your expansion plans. And they didn't specifically cite Big Sky Water and Sewer as having been an issue in that regard, but down in the valley, it can be a big problem. And so just if you are communicating regularly with them, that helps mutually beneficial understanding of where these projects are scoped and cited, and how that may play with land use planning decisions. It's pretty important for us. So.
Yeah, I've been asked to sit on this panel looking at this regionalization for Gallatin County, and we're trying to figure out our next meeting date. But I know there's been some work looking at the bigger scope of these wastewater and water needs in the canyon area or in the valley. There's also the Four Corners District. They're expanding. I think they're working on SBRs 3 and 4 now as well. So there's just a lot going on. And one of the people that's been driving up here for 25 years, thanks David for all your work. I live at Four Corners.
I have more of an operational question.
Yeah.
The gravity line, the return line back down the canyon, it's going to go to drain fields. How is that an improvement for the drain fields that we're using down and down?
Good question. The drain fields that serve the systems down there are like level 2, which don't treat to the kind of treatment quality that we would be doing. And I think level 2 systems have a standard of 7.5 milligrams per liter. Our goal is to be 3 or less.
Is that a nitrogen?
Yes, so phosphorus, nitrogen are the two big things we look at. And you've got quarries down there, old gravel pits, so we think there's opportunity for some fairly big disposal areas. And then just the management of this stuff. You know, right now you have very fractionalized management of all these little systems in the canyon. I use management generously there, but centralizing that makes a lot of sense. Operationally, cost-wise, all of this.
Commissioner Skinner, the other thing I would add is right now, as Ron articulated, we're currently disposing of effluent on golf courses, which is 100% consumptive. So if we are able to return that highly treated effluent to the aquifer, there's a big gain for downstream water users and fisheries. And so that would be a big win for the watershed.
And there is potential mitigation on it that could help potable water development.
So we're hopeful there's a water quality improvement as well as the water quantity.
The Yellowstone Club has a permit in DEQ right now that's very close to approval. It's in public comment for a very significant wastewater step, and that's taking treated effluent that's our treated water in the clubs, using it for snowmaking up in East. We've done a lot of good work to get to where they are, and they're very close to having the first ever in Montana snowmaking district. We've been talking about it for years, so it's nice to see it actually happen. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Is there any public comment on that presentation or any other questions from the board? Okay, we'll move on. Does that leave BSTO?
Yes. Currently, and I believe Whitney's here, you can give a Whitney. The Open Space Board in Gallatin County has a application in front of it from the Big Sky Community Organization. And we would like to voice our support from the Historic Area District. And I asked Whitney to give a very brief overview of the project. Before Whitney speaks, I was very excited to see that we're finally applying for some open space money. I will point out that over the years, we have been large contributors to the open space fund through our tax base here in Big Sky. And so just like that, we're finally having asked in front of you for some of those funds back. Go ahead, Whitney.
Thank you. Good morning. It's nice to meet you all. I appreciate this opportunity. The purpose of this ask is for the Big Sky Community Organization to have a facility close to the community park where we will store all the equipment used for our parks and trail maintenance. We have top-notch facilities here in Big Sky, supported to our residents that we maintain those in a very safe manner. So this equipment will be used for that purpose. Building will go up adjacent to the water and sewer plant, so we're working together to minimize our costs on this. And we are requesting less than 20% of the total funding for this project. VisRad will be a partner in this, as well as our other funding partners in this community. Kevin, does that provide enough detail?
That's perfect.
Great. Thank you.
Is this because of the opening of other eligible projects funding? Is that what you're applying with the applications for? It must be if it's for a facility for parks.
Commissioner McFarland, I don't have a good answer to that. I don't know, is this now, this project is now eligible to some changes? I don't have a good answer. I don't know what you do or Danny. I don't know. All I know is it's the first time we've asked for money out of this fund. So
just to clarify what I'm asking, I guess I'll answer my own question because I think I know the answer.
Okay.
So this year is the first year that we've portioned off a small part of the open space funds for what we're terming right now as other eligible projects that are, traditionally, the money has gone towards conservation easements on agriculture land, large open pieces of landscape. And a lot of those didn't or don't tend to have any kind of public access component or any kind of use component outside of the person applying for the conservation. And so we put a proportionately small amount of money aside this year for other eligible projects for things that would have to do with any kind of public access component, like trailheads or facilities or maintenance of facilities at trailheads, parking lots. Or we don't even know how big to think about that, but this is the first year that we're opening up those applications. And so I imagine that this is what makes this more competitive. It isn't that you wouldn't have been able to apply for something like this in the past. It's just that it wouldn't have competed very well under the criteria that our Open Lands Board is used to measuring projects in. So we created kind of a separate set of criteria and scoring so that now they're looking at these kind of smaller projects against each other instead of having to weigh them against large conservation easements. So I think that's probably what we're talking about here. Okay.
I don't know what the ask is for this. Does anybody know what the ask is?
I think it's 75,000.
Yeah, that's the maximum that we're allowing.
That's it. We're glad to have people thinking about applications for that already. It's a new idea. We understand that organizations aren't quick to onboard new funding sources and think about how they might approach those sources. And so, this year we might not be able to properly estimate the whole interest in this side of the program. So it's good to know some people have gotten some projects ready to go for application so that we can start to fund stuff. Okay, move on to Ed.
So we've at the chamber been hosting these joint county commission meetings for several years now, and unfortunately we haven't had the pleasure of one in person since our November 2019 event. So just thank you very much for you guys being here today and coming, and the opportunity to host you here at Big Sky in person. Again, I'm Anna Johnson, the Director of Business Development with the Big Sky Chamber. And we're going to talk on 3 points today. We're very proud of the accomplishments and achievements we've had in the last year surrounding COVID-19 response, and especially for our small businesses in the community. We've contributed and achieved a lot in joint effort with Visit Big Sky and in partnership with the state and with Resort Tax. This includes executing the Montana Aware campaign to help educate our visitors coming into the community, make sure that they are aware of our safety initiatives and to keep our community safe. We awarded 192,500 in micro grants to small businesses, to 57 small businesses this last year. We purchased 250,000 masks to distribute to the community, to all businesses free of charge, in addition to other PPE and signage to provide for free for our businesses in order to stay open through last summer season and through our winter season. You can still see signs all around the community that we distributed and that we're open, that we're ready for business, to wear masks and help keep our community safe. And then there's our partnership with Big Sky Relief that Danny spoke to earlier on free community-wide surveillance testing program that we executed, and really this provided a lot of reassurance and confidence for our workforce and our business owners to have a successful winter season. And as you heard, was a program really unparalleled in other communities. So we're extremely proud of our community's resilience and support of one another in the last year. Switching gears a little bit, I spoke earlier about our Black Diamond business awards dinner, but just wanted to really highlight this as a time to celebrate our members and our small businesses and what they've accomplished in the last year. So this will be on June 22nd, our 24th annual Black Diamond Business Awards dinner up at Big Sky Resort. And this will be a hybrid event limited to 100 people in person, and then the option to attend virtually and support some of our local restaurants with a set menu that they can pick up. So tickets will be going on sale soon, and keep an eye out for more information on that. Again, the real highlight of this event and what we're looking forward to is recognizing the outstanding work that so many in our community have put in over the past year. So I would just put an ask out to community members to please nominate your fellow businesses and community members for this recognition. Awards will be announced for 5 different categories: emerging entrepreneur, business person of the year, nonprofit business person of the year, business of the year, and the Chet Huntley Lifetime Achievement Award. So nominations are open on our website at this time, and we hope that you help us to recognize the community. And lastly, our Leadership Big Sky program is something we're very proud of, largely in part to Caitlin's hard work and ingenuity, creativity, and her effort this last year. Our Leadership Big Sky program's second cohort of 18 individuals has nearly completed another successful year of getting an exclusive and in-depth look at our community and really the business community and how we run here in Big Sky. So we've been able to keep it going this year despite COVID and with significant safety precautions in place, because now more than ever, we realize strong leadership and creativity are important, and this program has proven to be a valuable investment in Big Sky's future. The group this year has learned the ins and outs of how Big Sky works as an unincorporated census designated place that straddles 2 counties. They've gained insight and behind the scenes tours of development projects, emergency services, nonprofit organizations, and many of the integral community facilities that really enable our town to function. They've increased their leadership skills and they've grown their network, engaged with professionals across a variety of industries. So it's something, again, that we're very proud to facilitate and contribute to the community. Applications for next year's Leadership Big Sky cohort will open in September, with the first session kicking off on October 20th. So please, I encourage you to consider either taking part in this program yourself or nominating somebody from your organization to take part in this really one-of-a-kind experience and to help develop the future leadership of our community. And you can reach out to Caitlin with any questions on this program. And next, I'll turn it over to Caitlin for an update on the Visit Big Sky side of things. Thank you.
I'm Caitlin Quisenberry. I say I work for Team Big Sky. I mainly work for the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce, but speaking on behalf of Visit Big Sky today, as all of their representatives are in Hawaii, so good for them. Just real quick, wanted to say that we're really proud to announce our partnership with Carthagen for our new branding and marketing initiatives, including a new website that will be launching soon to help welcome our travel and tourism industry here and to keep safety. We've already been partnering with the state all winter on their Montana Aware campaign to increase awareness of COVID safety, masking, distancing. No doubt you've seen our signs all around town, which is very exciting. But the research does show that travelers want to go places that are taking these precautions. And as we've seen with most of our businesses being in the travel and tourism industry, it is nice to have that reassurance that we can have regular visitation, and even looking at our fall shoulder, we had increased visitation. So it's great that that worked for us. Just a quick plug of join us for our free virtual event on May 20th, your annual marketing outlook event. This is an opportunity for us to showcase what these marketing plans will be, including some speakers from the state and regional level to offer insight into what we're expecting for the summer season and sort of how we are positioning ourselves so our small businesses can plug into that as well and you guys can understand how we are positioning our community. Just real quick and easy. Thank you.
Very good, thanks. To conclude our agenda, an item again for public comment. Kept up with that, we went through each agenda item, but if there's anything from the public, Steve, go ahead, finish this off.
Just wanted to address both county commissions having you here together. Speaking to you as a member of the board of the Big Sky Trails Recreation and Park District, just FYI, that involves two districts, one on the Madison County side, one on the Gallatin County side. They function together under the terms of an interlocal agreement. That interlocal agreement expires in February of 2022. So we are beginning the process of thinking about how to update that agreement and keep that district operating going forward. Just wanted to give you a heads up that that's going to be coming down the pipe sometime soon. I've already been in touch with Jim Dorr about this to let him know that stand by for further updates. Thank you.
Thanks.
Morning or afternoon, what time is now? I'm Cindy Ruby-Dolan.
Can we come closer? Just for the microphone. Thank you so much, Cindy. Great, thank you.
I'm just Cindy Ruby-Dolan with Senator Dane's office out of southwestern Montana. I live in Butte. I work with Jim and Ron all the time out of Madison County. Kevin was nice enough to give me a tour of the montage not too long ago. But I just wanted to comment on a couple quick things. Senator Danes is certainly on the forefront of forest management, so big support for the wildlife mitigation and grants, letters of support. We do that, so I just wanted to mention that as well. Congratulations on the leadership for light at the end of the tunnel for the pandemic. And the mobile lab was just a huge bonus for Big Sky, and not only, but Gallatin and Madison counties as well. Let's see, federal transportation ends September 2021, so we'll be watching that closely. Want to mention that as well. And as a former Butte-Silverville commissioner, thank you for adding weeds when you said that. So that's all. I just want to mention that. Thanks.
Thank you.
I might just add how much I am continually impressed with how well you all work together. I commented once that there's a little bit of duplication on occasion, but that happens in any community, I think, when you have a number of interested people trying to move forward positively. So kudos to all of you for working so well together.
Just a huge thanks to the commissioners for making the trek out here. We as a community really appreciate your leadership and paying attention to us. So thank you very much for coming up here today. And thanks to the chamber for hosting this meeting.
And on behalf of the chamber, thank you all for so much for being here and helping us understand our community better.
Okay. Thank you. Close the meeting.